Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you on the PC sim racing platform known only as iRacing. Tonight marks round 9 of the 12-round calendar, and we'll be taking a look at Lobby 2, known as the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing Lobby, or in short, the CDA NLR Lobby, as they take on everybody's second favourite Belgian circuit, and that is Circuit Zolder. Your schedule for tonight is as follows. At 8 o'clock this evening, so in approximately 15 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session to see who qualifies on pole and indeed what a grid order will be for the sprint race. And immediately after that, we'll be following it up with the 15-minute sprint race, the first of our two races tonight, where the strategy simply is get to the front and hold the lead in your respective class until the very end. There's no need for a pit stop, there's no need to take on fuel or anything like that. It's a case of guns blazing all the way to the finish line. After that, we'll be conducting our post-race interviews with our race winners before taking a brief break and returning at approximately 5 to 9 in preparation for the feature race, the 60-minute feature race, which makes our second and the final of our two races tonight, 60-minute race with that all-important pit stop and that strategic element and strategy very key here at Circuit Zolder, as we did see in the Apex Racing Academy lobby, Lobby 1 last night. Now, of course, just to remind everybody that tonight's broadcast is essentially a look back on the racing that occurred in Lobby 2, as the racing occurred last night live. It occurred on what was Wednesday, the 19th of January, but because we cannot be in two places at once to bring you the commentary, it is the case we're taking a look back at the replay files that have been made available to us. So we're bringing you that experience as if it were live. So we do not know the results, we do not know what has happened, and we are going to be experiencing this completely fresh, just like you guys and girls in the viewing rooms right now. And speaking of viewing it, you can tune in via free media platforms tonight. As always, you can tune in via YouTube, that's Next Gen Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, if you're on Facebook, you can tune in via facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Or last but not least, if you are Twitch inclined, you can tune in via my personal Twitch channel, which is TX141 on Twitch. And indeed, who am I? Well, I'm your commentator, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And it is good to be back once again and ready to see how our drivers get on at one of the hardest and most tested circuits on the calendar in terms of its intensity and its very, very high curbs. Now, this lobby sponsored by Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing. It's only fair that we introduce our two sponsors for this lobby, and let's start off with Coach Dave Academy. So Coach Dave Academy is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Named after, of course, the legendary GT World Challenge driver of David Perel, the South African driver who is known for showing what can happen when you bridge the gap between sim racer and real world racer, and a very fast driver indeed. And, well, Coach Dave Academy, a place where if you're looking to gain a tenth of a second, a whole second, or just look at a way to better drive your selected car, it is the place to go for all that information. And indeed, CoachDaveAcademy.com, whilst there are a number of paid services, there's also free services available via their Discord channel. And on top of that, the one key thing about Coach Dave Academy is that whilst they have a reputation for providing all of this information and support for Assetto Corsa competition, they have quite recently moved into the world of iRacing. So it is the case Coach Dave Academy supporting iRacing, and indeed plenty of information available. Now, in terms of their involvement with us, they've supported us in putting on Lobby 2 and contributing to the sizable prize pool available to our Lobby 2 drivers, and that nicely brings us on to Next Level Racing. Founded in 2009, Next Level Racing is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range. And with a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers, Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. If you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, nextlevelracing.com today for further information. And again, Next Level Racing supported us by contributing to our sizable prize pool for this series, and we're very grateful to have them on board coming back from Season 1, whereas Coach Dave Academy joined us as of Season 2. Now, when we talk about prizes, we of course need championship standings, and after the opening 8 rounds, 4 rounds to go including tonight's round, we were last time at Spa-Francorchamps, the more renowned Belgian circuit if you will, which is more of the home of the 24-hour Spa, whereas today we're at the home of DTM at Zolder. It is the case that going into this round in the Pro Championship, Gareth Williams, with drop scores now applied, and of course those drop scores being very pivotal in those championship standings, Gareth Williams leading over Paul Walton by 39 points. Now, unfortunately, going into tonight, Paul Walton not able to make the races, as I understand it. So this is a poor opportunity for Paul Walton, but it is a great opportunity for Gareth Williams to be able to break away and be able to pull a distance over his main rival. That also means that Josh Wiggins and Alistair Kirk, located in P3, P4, they're separated by only 3 points apiece. It's a great opportunity for them to close up to second place man Paul Walton and really start to leverage the pressure for being the number one challenger to Gareth Williams, or at least in bringing that contest to P2. Completed the top 5 there, Matthew Prowting on 196 points, and Matthew Prowting having a good day at Spa and a good revival of form. Can he continue that tonight? Dan Murray, P6, were DNF in the feature race, meaning he wasn't able to pick up all the points he would have wanted, and Paul Scott, Lammertwedder, William Fowler and Paul Williams completed our top 10, and a special mention must go to William Fowler with an absolutely staggering performance over the course of proceedings at Spa. The Crest Autosport driver missing out on the perfect evening by not getting the win in the sprint race and also missing out on the fastest lap in the feature race, but still William Fowler showing just how fast he can go and still plenty of time for him to gain points on the 157 he's on. Outside of the top 10, Nigel Stock trying to creep his way back into the top 10. The Ford GT driver, the only Ford GT driver in this series. And in the car, which was classed as many as not being capable of being able to get into the top 10, Nigel Stock is continuing to try and push his way back in. Michael Seal, Stefan Albanese, unable to take part at Spa, meaning they did not pick up any points. But Stuart P. Taylor, the TGC racing driver, now moving up to P14 and continuing to build his campaign and trying to inch his way towards the top 10. Jamie Dory with non-starters at Spa, staying on 103 points, and then the rest of our Pro Championship consisting of Nathan J. Scott, James Neve, Koshi Kelly, Ed May and Rick Jansen completing our championship order there. Meanwhile, outside of the Pro Championship and in the AM class, it is the case that Stephan Wessels leads after what was a history-making evening at Spa, with not only the South African driver picking up the perfect evening with the maximum point score, but also picking up the overall win at Spa-Francorchamps. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the AM class driver took the win ahead of the pros and in the sprint race at Spa, and that is history being made. And indeed, what a night it was, and Wessels was on fire. And can we expect him to repeat that tonight at Zolder? We know he does enjoy this circuit and has a lot of experience here. He's leading by the margin of what is, if we do a bit of quick math there, 65 points over what is Mark Baker, and indeed that advantage just continuing to disappear off into the distance, it would seem, or can Mark Baker perhaps reel him back in tonight? But Baker, I think, is going to be looking behind him and seeing Darren Doherty and Davide Favo continuing their pursuit. Doherty in particular closing that deficit to P2 man, Mark Baker, and then in P5 right now, Gareth Mills, only 2 points off his fellow South African Davide Favo. The two of them exchanging place in this championship and really contesting to be the better place to go after Darren Doherty. Outside the top 5, Elwyn Sykes in P6, another member of the South African contingent racing in this series, and 191 points. Were a difficult day, and indeed, Sykes, Mills and Favo all having difficult races at Spa and losing out after a lot of momentum was gained in round number 7. Can they bring themselves back tonight? Travis Linscombe Hatfield, who will not be joining us as I understand it for the purposes of Zolder tonight, having a DNF in the feature race at Spa, meaning that his points crusade has been stemmed somewhat, and he's only 10 points ahead of Mark Sykes, who continues to bring in the results. Chris Keenan with a good set of performances, particularly in the feature race there. It was the case that Chris Keenan putting a stellar performance at his home circuit, really enjoying it and picking up one of his best performances of the night in the feature race, and Liam Tack completing our top 10 on 127 points. And you can see that right now he is 17 points ahead of Jack Wyborn, who with a non-finish in the feature race was unable to close down to the top 10 as rapidly as he'd want, but he'll try to do so tonight. Paul Colburn, Tom Delaney and Sean Scoot completing our top 14, with Mark Jardine not returning as of Spa and still on 51 points. Renus Hammerin there having non-finishes in both races, and Andy Walmsley picking up some great points to continue his charge into the top 15, with Luke Hobson, Rhys Young and Adam BM Quinn completing our championship. Meanwhile, in the team standings, or the team championship, or the constructors, if you will, it is the case that going into this round, remembering that these teams are located across both lobbies, i.e. Lobby 1 and Lobby 2, and some teams are split across the lobbies, others are focused on a particular lobby. It is the case that Luxim 24 of MV Esports currently lead by a single point over Racing Team Astra, and these two teams really dominating their respective lobbies, with Luxim in what is Lobby 1, and meanwhile Racing Team Astra in Lobby 2. It is the case that both teams trying to get as many points as possible to be the number one team come the end of the series. Switchback Motorsport continuing to be in P3 with a stellar set of performances at Spa once again, just holding off NXTGEN Racing Blue for the time being in P4, and Altitude Esports completing the top 5 on 529 points. And then we do have a gap of 26 points to RD Simsport Team 1, with Apex with MV Esports trying to close them down, only 2 points behind in P7. CXR Project Black, Team Tetrage and Ignium Motorsport complete our top 10. Outside the top 10, however, is Team TGC GT Racing, who are on the ball and continue to charge their way up the standings. Can they get themselves into the top 10 come the end of tonight? Or will NXTGEN Racing Orange in P12 or Delta Motorsport in P13 be able to reel them back in? Ignium Motorsport Spark in P14, just ahead of McChange B2 and McChange B1, before Bright Esports, Ignium Motorsport Blaze, RD Sim Sport 2 and SVPMR complete our top 20. And then looking at our final team championship positions, it is Team Racing Netherlands Blue ahead of Team Racing Netherlands Red and Team Racing Netherlands Orange completing down to P23, with Team DDR and Ignium Motorsport Phoenix completing our team championship going into this round. Now, speaking of this round, what track are we at? Well, we are, of course, at Circuit Zolder, the Grand Prix layout, consisting of what is 11 corners located in the Heusden Zolder region of Belgium. And this image is provided to us by Sim Racing Wiki. And indeed, this circuit, a very tricky circuit, given the fact that it is all about high-speed braking zones and carving your way through three very tricky and feral chicanes. And what better way to demonstrate this than a reference lap, as brought to you by Stephan Wessels, our AM Championship leader in this lobby. So making his way down towards turn number 1, trail breaking in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, attacking that apex before stamping back on the throttle and making his way up towards turn number 2. Coming heavy on the brakes here, trail breaking in all the way down to second gear and accelerated as soon as he taps the apex and using the full width of the circuit before flat out through turn number 3 and now heading up towards turn number 4 to complete the first half of the lap. Trail breaking down from 4th to 3rd gear and attacking the apex there, but you'll know it's a very tight exit out of turn 4, not as wide and forgiving as the previous 3 corners. And as he makes his way down the straight towards the first of the chicanes, the blind chicane, breaking that 100 metre wall and coming down to 2nd gear and attacking those apex curves, not going too high on them. We see all what happens. If you go too high, you'll be launched into the air. But now he makes his way down through 6, flat out, and now breaks into the 2nd of the chicanes, coming into turn 7, which begins with the chicane, but it flows all the way through the double right-hander here as well, and he's completely committed as he gets a little bit of snap oversteer there, running over the first of the 2 right-hand curbs, and as he makes his way through turn number 8 here, flat out for 8, comes into the braking zone for turn number 9. Coming down the gearbox to 2nd gear, in fact to 1st gear in the Ferrari, and accelerating out to turn number 9 and through 10, it goes flat out through the left-right combination of 10 before making his way up to the final corner. It is the 3rd and final chicane, and that's the Jackie Ick chicane as he breaks on the 100 metre board and comes all the way down to 1st gear, going a little bit wide of the initial apex before actually clattering over the 2nd apex to complete the lap. A beautiful lap by Stephan Wessels. But now, as for our rules tonight, our drivers shall be running the fixed iRacing high downforce setup for tonight's races, the sprint setup in the sprint and the endurance setup in the feature race, and it will be the case in the sprint race. Each driver has 1 fast repair available. They'll also be subject to a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. In the feature race, meanwhile, our grid is set by reverse Drivers' Championship order based on the championship standings after the previous round, so round 8 at Spa, and it is the case that our grid will be separated into driver classes. The pros will start ahead of the AMs, and they'll start ahead approximately 1 second up the road. So that will mean that our lowest placed driver in the pro class will be starting on pole for the feature race, going into this round, of course, in the respective championships, and then it will be the case that the lowest placed driver in the AM Drivers' Championship will lead the AM field around 1 second apart from the pro class. To encourage that pit stop, of course, we have our drivers' starting fuel loads being restricted to 70% for the start of the race in the feature race, meaning there is that mandatory pit stop where our drivers will need to take on the fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. Each driver will have 1 fast repair available, much like the sprint, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. Well, I think that's enough for rules and regulations and whatnot. We now go back to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, as we return to the circuit. And right now, this final practice session coming to its conclusion as all of our drivers are just itching to go at this point in time as they make their way on around. And it is the case that right now we can see that our fastest man and really our history maker last time out, and is he going to try and go for a double today? It is Stephan Wessels here as he makes his way across that timeline, the fastest man in this final free practice session here. And of course, free practice is not the truest indicator of pace because some drivers might be running more fuel than others, some of them might be running different setup. Wessels putting a bit too hard there, and will he push too hard here at Zolder? To be fair, keeps the car well planted on circuit and gives his teammates from Racing Team Astra a little bit of a knock there, sending him around, and I believe that may have been Davide Favo who got the tap. We'll have to wait and see how those guys get on, as we also see Elwin Sykes making his way around as well. And not to say that we're biased towards Racing Team Astra, we looked at 3 of their drivers back to back. We can also see Nigel Stock here making his way through the privateer in the Ford GT, and we can hear the roar there of the Ford GT of its 3.5 litre V6 engine as he makes his way up towards what is the 2nd of the chicanes. And Nigel Stock, the Englishman, of course, we're looking to do everything he can to show that that Ford GT is not for show, it is also to deliver deliver the blows as he makes his way up towards turns 8 and 9. But whilst we are waiting, we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Billy Goat Boy. Hope you're doing well, Billy Goat Boy. And also in the Facebook chat to Katie Eames, who we were messaging in the build-up to the proceedings. And Katie hopefully saying that hopefully the track plays a little bit nicer for Lobby 2 tonight, because we did see the Apex Racing Academy lobby last night, so Lobby 1, particularly on the sprint race on the opening lap, a major set of incidents occur down into the first of chicanes, but there are a couple of taps between cars and it sent cars spinning around, of course, with a pack of over 30 drivers coming and roaring on through. That did lead to a major incident, but the majority of our drivers managed to navigate around it as we make our way into qualifying. And we say hello to Attack Alley in the Twitch chat. Good evening to you, Attack Alley, as we get this qualifying session underway, and we are now just waiting for our drivers to pile out of the pit lane here, and we can see Matthew Prowting being one of our very first drivers to come on out in the BMW M4. Now, Matthew Prowting, the British driver, of course, really showed great performance at Spa. And one of the things about Matthew Prowting, really, if we had to sort of analyse his season so far, he's been there, but he's not really been the centre of attention. He was looking quite prominent in the opening couple of rounds. So some great performances from Matthew Prowting. And it's not as though he went absent without leave or AWOL, but it was more the case that it's just been a bit quiet from him. But he's starting to creep back into the picture, and Spa really favoured Prowting. He put in 2 very good performances. And will we be seeing more from the number 18 driver today as he makes his way up through turn number 6? Well, I would say if Prowting can get a good qualifying session in here, then he's got every right to do very well in the sprint race to begin with, given how difficult overtaking is here at the Zolder circuit. And we saw that in Lobby 1, and you can see it from the natural nature of the track in the fact that it's such a tight circuit. There's very few places to overtake, or if you are going to go for an overtake, what you've effectively got to do is either have a massive overspeed to begin with, or you've got to try and force the move. You've got to lunge under braking, which is dangerous in itself, and it's a huge gamble because you outbrake yourself, you send yourself into the wall. But it is Prowting right now making his way on around on our circuit map tracker as he comes on through, and we can see the initials of our drivers there for the time being. We'll update that with our placements very soon, and we're going to ride on board here with Matthew Prowting as he shows us what it means to take the BMW M4 GT3 around for a lap. So he makes his way across the timing line here. Of course, the engine in the front compared to the reference to that Ferrari, the engine being in the back. We can see here having to take it a bit more staggered into turn 1, trying to force the front end of the car into the apex a bit more. And as he comes into 2 here, just a little bit gentler on the brakes on initial turning and running almost a bit wide. In fact, running a bit too wide. That's a compromised lap already, just exploiting the throttle pedal a bit too early. And as he makes his way through 3 and up into 4 now, flying through the right-hander, nice on that apex curve and keeps it very tight together. But I think he may have been knocked a little bit. By knocked, I mean in terms of his confidence, by the mistake he made out of turn number 2. But still, he pushes on here and comes down into the Kleiner chicane, making his way on through and attacking the second of the 2 apexes. They're quite high, not overly high, but about as much as you really want before you launch the front right wheel off the ground. And as he makes his way through 6 and up into 7, a very heavy braking zone. As soon as you come out of the left-hander 6, you've got to get on the brakes when you're at maximum speed, particularly on low fuel, because otherwise you won't make the braking zone for the second chicane, or if you do, you're going to go very wide. As we see one of our Audis moving out the way there, and now as he makes his way through 8 and down towards 9, coming into the heavy braking zone here for the right angle corner. I mean, it's a case you're really encouraged to exploit that curve and then get back on the throttle as soon as possible and use the runoff curbing, and he does indeed, does Prowting as he now makes his way down towards the final chicane. Making his way down towards Jackie Hicks at this point as he comes into the braking zone here, all the way down through the gearbox once again. It's looking a good lap so far, if you excuse the mistake he made earlier on as he comes across the line. It's not going to be the perfect lap, of course. We do expect he's got more laps in the tank, but he's going to set the initial pace, and it's a 30.1. We're definitely expecting faster laps to come on in as he makes his way on through, and we can see Josh Wiggins, the RD Simsport driver here, in the absence of his teammate. He will have the weight of RD Simsport on his shoulders, but I think he can take it as he goes provisional P3 in the Pro Class, and we see Gareth Williams here, our championship leader in the Pro Class, immediately setting what is a 128.43, but already, ladies and gentlemen, we can see that Stephan Wessels, the AM championship leader, and really the man to beat in qualifying, it would seem. Well, it is the case, he is still the man to beat. The AM driver setting a 128.238, and that is quite the lap. And to be fair, his teammate Sean Scoot, who we're now pronouncing his surname correctly as he jumps back to the pit, not too far off either, but I say that. And then Mark Baker comes roaring on through here, and the Team Tetrarch AM driver showing that it's not just about Stephan Wessels. He is there, and at the moment he is only the best part of what is 3/10 off of Wessels' time. And to be fair though, 3/10 is very hard to extract out of here unless you absolutely nail the lap. And I do think that Mark Baker right now, I think he will take what is P2 in his class, P3 overall with a pinch of pride, and we'll have to wait and see how it evolves over the qualifying session. And remembering, we have one of our shortest laps in the season here, coming in at just under 1.5 minutes, so it does mean our drivers will get plenty of qualifying laps in. We're looking at approximately 6 to 8 qualifying laps in, or flying laps, however you want to word them. Depends on whether a driver jumps to the pits, whether they go back and make some changes to the car in terms of the fuel load. Remember, they're not allowed to tweak the setup of the car, they are allowed to modify the fuel they run in qualifying, as we can see Matthew Prowting making his way across that timing line and going provisional P2 in the Pro Class, P3 overall as he makes his way through, and Prowting improving this time as Gareth Williams also does so, and we can see right now Prowting making his way on around. As he comes on through, we look a little bit further around the circuit and we can see Darren Doherty right now making his way in quite a train of cars here, all the way down towards Jackie X chicane. And one of the challenges here at Zolder, of course, is you do not really want the toe in qualifying, or if you do, you want to catch it to get the perfect lap. And what we mean by that is there's not that many long straights. There are places where you can gain a little bit of speed on the straights by being in the toe, but we don't have an excessively long straight like we do at, say, Spa with the Kimmel straight. And what that means is that as Darren Doherty comes on through, goes a bit deep there into turn one, the Altitude Esports driver has got a lot more work to do in order to try and get himself further up the order. Because right now, being P11 overall, you think that's absolutely fantastic, and it is, but he's got 3 AM drivers who are ahead of him, Sean Scoot, Mark Baker, and also Stephan Wessels, who've all put in phenomenal times. And to be fair, Darren Doherty putting himself right in amongst the pros as well. And it is the case, we are seeing more and more the pros seemingly having the AMs filter their way up into the category, and that is looking very, well, it's very good for us, of course. We do like to see our AMs taking the contest, as Darren Doherty gets it very wrong there on the second curb, and we can see it's almost as in synchronisation. I think that's Davide Favo also getting it wrong, and he is going to try and get that car back up to speed as soon as possible, and multiple drivers having a difficult day through there this time around. But as they make the way on through, we can see Chris Keenan here making his way all the way through the sequence of corners here. Of course, the Belgian driver making his way down into turn number 9 right now, and as he comes on into that braking zone, looking nice and smooth at this point in time, and we'll wait and see what he is able to achieve as he comes out of turn number 10 and down towards 11 here. And Chris Keenan throwing everything he can at this, currently P18 class provisionally, P18 overall, and as he makes his way through the final chicane here, comes around to complete this lap. It's not looked good in the second half of the lap. Can he improve? I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge. He doesn't improve. Well, in fact, he does improve, but it's not enough. And in fact, Liam Tack has gone one place up on him, and the Englishman, or the Brit, I should say, in the Williams Martini Racing liveried Ferrari 488 GT3. Absolutely love that livery, a stellar livery, brought to life on a stellar car. And as he makes his way through turn number 3 right now, Liam Tack, well, he has not had the strongest of seasons, but at the same time, I think he's really enjoying the experience in the Ferrari, and indeed enjoying the experience in this league, as we do see him briefly disappear into the ether and then return due to connectivity issues. And it is the case that Liam Tack just giving it everything he can and enjoying his time out on circuits. He goes a bit too high there on the entry curve into the Kleiner chicane and almost upsetting the car way too much. But as he makes his way on through, we are now halfway into this qualifying session, and we just take a look into the chat to say hello to Elwin Sykes in the Twitch chat, who says this track requires a lot of concentration. Indeed it does. I must agree with you there, Elwin. And meanwhile, Stephan Wessels in the YouTube chat saying good evening, gents, and good evening to you, Stefan, and we look forward to seeing how you get on today. Indeed, to all the drivers who were racing this lobby last night and tuning in, I look forward to seeing how you all get on. Indeed, those who were not in the lobby last night, I'm sure will be looking forward to seeing how you all got on as well. But no spoilers in the chat, if you please. We don't want to have the results given away anytime soon. But meanwhile, making his way on through right now, Paul Williams, and well, he has got the NXTGEN Racing livery on the car there in the number 7 car. And I'm not sure if that is a slight glitch. I think it is a glitch because we seem to have 2 liveries loaded over the top of one another, but normally he would be running in the Team Tetra Rouge colours as he makes his way into the pits. So we'll try and get that fixed for the purposes of what is the second race of tonight, the feature race. Graphical glitches do occur every so often, and well, that's a little bit of an error, but as we can see, our drivers making their way all the way around right now. We can see that Jamie Doherty here, the next-gen racing driver in the Audi R8, giving it everything he's got as he makes his way a little bit too aggressively there through the Kleiner chicane, and you can tell Jamie Doherty giving it everything he has, as William Ford and Jamie Doherty right now have got themselves into the top 2 positions. William Ford just ahead of Doherty as he makes his way through what is turn number 7 right now, Jamie Doherty. And well, it was the story at what was Spa with regards to Jamie Doherty versus other drivers, indeed a William Ford and also a Gareth Williams. Williams, and if you wind back to what was the Red Bull Ring, Jamie Doherty given that pursuit of Alistair Kirk, and he didn't quite have enough in the tank in order to be able to maintain that challenge all the way to the finish line. It was very close, but in the end it was a mistake from Doherty that spelled the doom of his chase after what was Alistair Kirk at the Red Bull Ring. But will he be able tonight, Jamie Doherty, to pick up his maiden win? We'll have to wait and see, but we can see that meanwhile William Ford making his way around. I think Jamie Doherty's actually won a race in this series. I might be a little bit wrong, but one man who has won multiple races now in this series, in fact he's picked up 2 wins so far, is William Ford here, the Crest Autosport driver, as he makes his way through turn number 9 and now heads through 10. And right now he's the fastest man out on circuit, and indeed he is on an outlap and looking to put in another good lap in the near future. We will have to wait and see. The Audi R8 can be quite strong here at Zolder. The one thing it's very sensitive to, however, is raised curbs, and there's a lot of them around this circuit. The curbs around Zolder are curbs which are not to be treated lightly, as we see here William Ford going on to another lap and making his way into turn number 1. And you can see there the rear end just coming loose at the curb, and that is going to cost him some time. William Ford immediately pushing a bit too hard and going beyond the grip available on the rear of the car. Those rear tyres just lighting up, and as he makes his way now through turn number 3 and heads up towards 4, I do think that William Ford might have pushed this one a little bit too hard. He might have to go again very soon. Of course, he will have set himself up to go again. I'm sure he will put multiple laps of fuel in the tank, as we do see Stephan Wessels improve to a 1:28.055. So we've only got one driver who's set a 27 so far, and that is our provisional pole man of William Ford. But now Stephan Wessels goes on to another lap. Will he be able to come back versus William Ford? That is the big question, of course, that we're all asking, as William Ford here looks to try and reclaim some pride for the pro class in terms of them taking pole position in qualifying, as he makes his way through turn 7 right now. But this is not going to be an improvement of a lap, we don't think, as we're looking at his sector timings right now, and in terms of his comparison to his previous best, he's not looking up, and particularly in the first 2 sectors. I think he's going to do it'll be in the second half of the lap as he makes his way on through 9 and up towards 11. But just up the road from him we do have Alistair Kirk, who currently P6 in class, P9 overall. The pro driver here having a difficult day at Zolder in qualifying, it would seem, perhaps not suiting him this circuit, or indeed suiting his choice of car. As meanwhile Matthew Prowting goes P2 overall for 28.036 as he comes on through here. He's not too far off now. He's only 1.5 tenths for William Ford, who goes again, and Prowting's also going to go, and these qualifying laps continue to come down as we are just waiting to see how everything shapes up. As we can say hello there in the YouTube chat to iRacing Navarro01. Good evening to you, Navarro. Of course, Navarro being Navarro de Bova are one of our racers in the AM class for the Apex Racing Academy lobby. That is lobby 1, but we focus, of course, back to what's happening in lobby 2 now, and we'll be Prowting, and there's Stephan Wessels coming across the line, and that is a monster of a lap. That's a 27.773, and that is almost 1.5 tenths clear of William Ford. It's 1.3 tenths clear, and well, now the shoe is on the other foot. It's a case that William Ford now has to try and usurp Stephan Wessels, or will Wessels make it another overall pole lap in the AM classes? We can see here Ford pushing there through the chicane, the second of our 3 chicanes, and doing everything he can in the Audi R8 as he makes his way now over the crest through turn number 8 and down into turn number 9. Now, as he comes down at this point, let's just wait and see whether this lap is going to be an improvement. We're looking at our timing screens right now, and to be fair, William Ford is considerably faster than Stephan Wessels in Sector 1 by the best part of almost 2 seconds. In fact, it's elsewhere around the lap. Although I say that it is the case, I think Stephan Wessels is actually on another lap right now, and it's not gone right, so that's why our timing screens are a little bit glitched. But William Ford not improving at this point in time, and as he makes his way across the timing line this time, what's it going to be? It's not enough to improve, but I can tell you one thing, Matthew Prowting has improved. He hasn't gained a position, but he has improved his lap time a little bit more, and now he's only 200ths off of the back of William Ford. And right now the contest to be the pole sitter in the pro class is only inching ever closer, and Jamie Doherty 2 tenths down on Matthew Prowting. But then we can see that Mark Baker here, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, as he makes his way through turn number 2 and up towards 3, it is the case that the AM driver who's having a very good qualifying session, to be fair, and I think enjoying his overall laps right now. It is the case he is looking to sandwich himself very nicely in amongst the faster pro drivers, and as a result that was setting up very nicely for what should be a comfortable race, or at least a comfortable positioning at the race start ahead of his AM competitors. And the main one he'll be worrying about is Darren Doherty improves to P8. Well, I was going to say just Sean Scoot, but it is Darren Doherty as well, as we see here Doherty making his way through turn number 1 and now up towards 2, and the Altitude Esports driver here as he makes his way on through the right-hander. He's got a little bit of traffic in the form of Paul Williams just ahead, and we can see, I believe that was not Paul Williams. There's Paul Williams moving out the way right now with the glitch livery, but as we can see here, Darren Doherty making his way through turn number 4, and Sean Scoot just only the best part of what is a 10th ahead of him right now in the AM classification and overall classification. These two nearly inseparable, albeit they're quite spaced out on circuit. As we can see now, Sean Scoot making his way into turn number 9 here, and as he makes his way on through, let's see what he can do. But also one driver who's really on the bubble right now and needs to find a little bit more lap time. We're looking at him. That's Gareth Williams, our Pro Championship leader coming into this round. He's got a sizable advantage, to be fair, and with the absence of Paul Walton, I think he will be thinking to himself that this is a great opportunity, or effectively he's got a free pass tonight. But as he makes his way down towards turn 1 right now, he's only P6 overall, P4 in class, and whilst that doesn't sound bad for him, it's against the runner form that we've seen, and perhaps it's really just the case that Zolder not suiting him as a driver and suiting the car as well. We know the BMW M4 is not as strong as around Zolder as some of the mid-engine rear drive cars. The Ferrari in particular seems to go very well around here, whereas the BMW M4 seems to have to be pushed through some of the corners. We saw that with the onboard with Prowting earlier on. And as we see Williams making his way down towards turn number 5, just keeping his foot in it right now and coming into that very heavy braking zone as the 15 minutes of qualifying is up. And we see Williams going a bit too high on the curbs there. He straightens his way on through, but he gambled everything there to get that momentum. And well, we'll have to wait and see if it's cost him dearly or not as he makes his way down into the braking zone for turn number 7. Now he flows on through the second chicane, making his way on. We're not seeing too many more improvements. Mark Sykes has not set a lap time, nor has Jack Wybon. I think both of them are going to be starting from the back of the field for the purposes of the sprint race, but we can see here Gareth Williams making his way down into turn number 9 right now. Behind him he does have Sean Scoot, I believe, and as they make their way on through, it's looking as though it's not going to be a major improvement from Gareth Williams. He's down in the opening 3 sectors. He comes towards the end of sector 4. He comes up towards that timeline. It's not an improvement either. One more sector awaits him. Will he be able to get an improvement here? I don't think so. As he comes out of the final quarter, I think the best he's going to do will be P6 overall, P4 in class. He crosses the line, and he doesn't cross the line. In fact, he backs off. It's not enough. And well, with Jamie Doherty coming through right now, can the Briton improve and go further up the order? Well, it's not looking good so far, but as he crosses that timeline, what's the Audi R8 driver going to do? And he decides to park it up. It's not enough, and that means, ladies and gentlemen, it's Stephan Wessels who takes your overall pole position in this race, and well, it'll be the case that William Foyle will be lined up alongside him. It will be the AM driver qualifying ahead of the pole sitter in the Pro class, as right now we are waiting for this qualifying session to conclude. And I believe we have got a couple of drivers still on laps, although I would say that Elwyn Sykes is at the end of a lap already, because he would have had to have gone across that timeline after the 15 minutes was up to go onto his current lap, unless he's completely binned it out on circuit and therefore had to bring the car back up to speed. But it is the case that right now it is Stephan Wessels who is out qualifying the field, and the AM driver continuing to shatter expectations and raise the roof of those expectations. As we can see right now, one of his teammates, Elwyn Sykes, making his way on around to the end of this qualifying session and on a lap which is not going to see him improve, because this lap will be considered to be invalid. As he makes his way on through, we now get the transition over to the race. Very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, we return to the scenic pictures, and let's bring you your starting grid for race number 1. So starting on pole then, the AM driver Stephan Wessels, qualifying ahead of the pole position driver of the Pro class, and that was William Foyle. Matthew Prowting and Jamie Doherty lined up on the second row, with Mark Baker, second place in the AM class, lined up on the third row in P5. Alongside him, Gareth Williams, our Pro Championship leader, not being able to hook it up completely in qualifying. Sean Scoot and Darren Doherty, the two AM drivers there, qualifying P3, P4 in their class, and that is P7, P8 on the grid. A good number of AM drivers really forcing themselves in amongst the Pro drivers. You'd love to see it. And Paul Williams and Alistair Kirk completing our top 10. Lamont Wedder and Paul Scott on what is the 6th row, and then after them on row number 7 is Nigel Stock and Davide Favo, followed by Stuart P. Taylor and Josh Wiggins. Josh Wiggins starting off qualifying strong, but the RD Simsport driver in the Porsche 911 seemingly falling down the order as qualifying went on. Gareth Mills and Elwyn Sykes completing our 9th row, Liam Tack and Chris Keenan completing our top 20, and it is Dan Murray and Jack Wybon on row number 11, and then Mark Sykes, last but not least, on row number 12 in P23, the last of our drivers, and he'll be starting right from the back of the field. And not set a time in qualifying much like Jack Wybon, but I believe it is based on countback that Wybon is ahead of Mark Sykes. But that is our grid, ladies and gentlemen, and now we prepare to go racing. Of course, the big question will be, can this man, Stephan Wessels, make it another overall win and continue to raise the records from the M class versus the Pro class? We'll have to wait and see. As we look to the blimp camera right now, we can see all of our drivers lined up on that wonderful grid. They'll be getting underway very shortly for what is the parade lap in preparation for the manual double file rolling start. But indeed, all of our drivers absolutely itching to go here at what is the Zolder circuit. And as they get ready, I think it's going to be the case that all of them will be thinking now about exactly how they plan to take that opening lap, because that opening lap can be very challenging as we now look back down towards the grid. And it will be Stephan Wessels who takes our drivers away from pole position as the safety car pulls off very shortly, and then it will be to the South African to follow suit with William Foyle just behind alongside him. As they make the way, you can see William Foyle immediately launching out of the box to try and get a little bit of temperature into those rear tyres, and they all make their way now for the purposes of this formation lap. Now, as they make the way on down and around the circuit, the challenge, of course, will be that overtaking comes at a premium, as we've talked about already. And with that in mind, I think some drivers will be looking to try and get the perfect start here for the purposes of race number 1 and just try and gain as many places as possible on that open lap. As we ride on board here with Nigel Stott. Now, the Ford GT driver, he's got one of the most aggressive cars in terms of its launch procedure, in terms of its very quick up through the gears initially, great acceleration, the Ford GT. Will he be able to make his way up the field, given the fact he's qualified right in the midfield and, well, right at the back of what has been quite a sizable Pro pack, which goes all the way up to Paul Williams in P5 in the Pro class. And I think that is the one thing that Nigel Stott will have to consider, is that he's starting P9 in class. He'll want to gain as many places as possible, and the Ford GT being quite a wide car, it is going to be a difficult car to overtake it once he gets it ahead. But meanwhile, as we look back to the exterior cameras right now, looking a bit further on down, we can see Mark Sykes here right towards the back, and Dan Murray there just a little bit ahead of him as they make their way down towards the chicane. And as they come on down right now, it is one of those situations where Mark Sykes, I think this might be a bit of a strategic gamble, and this could actually work out for the Englishman starting right at the back, because I think he might be anticipating there's a bit of carnage at the start of this race, and he can gain some places by simply not overtaking, but by gaining through attrition as he makes his way up and over the crest into turn 6 very shortly. As we look from the back of the field back to the midfield, Lambert Wedder, the Dutchman, who we haven't talked about much in the qualifying session, but we look at a little bit now in the race. It's the case, the Team Racing Netherlands driver here, we're looking to do his utmost to try and get himself to the head of this pack of pro drivers in the hunt for P5 in class, and trying to get himself a bit further up the field, looking to get some good points. Great driver, Wedder, of course, with some fantastic racing. But now we look up towards the front, and, well, I think eyes are going to be on Matthew Prowting. You can see him there on the second row, the BMW on the left-hand side behind Stephan Wessels. What can Prowting do from one of his better qualifying performances in recent history in this series? Well, all that and more will we find now come the start and through to the conclusion of the 15-minute sprint race, as they now all make their way down towards the final chicane, down towards the Jackie Ickbrock chicane, and as they make their way in towards the corner, it'll be Stephan Wessels who takes our drivers away and to the green. Lights out and away we go as our drivers make their way up towards the timing line. We can see William Foyle getting an immediately good start versus Stephan Wessels and getting ahead, nose ahead into turn number 1 as they commence the 15 minutes of racing. Meanwhile, Jamie Doherty making his way up the inside as well, but he'll find himself on the outside into turn 2 now, and Doherty can't quite make the move that Foyle did early on, as meanwhile Matthew Prowting just watches there in P4. Gareth Williams behind in P5 right now, continue to observe as Mark Baker has dropped a little bit behind as they all make their way up towards turn number 4. We can see Alistair Kirk flashing his lights there, signalling that he wants to be let on through, and the AM driver's not going to block the Pro as they come roaring on down towards what is turn number 5. They come down towards the Kleiner chicane, and as they make their way in towards it right now, we can see it's the case. Well, we've got Gareth Williams versus Matthew Prowting going for the move. Meanwhile, a bit further down, we can see a little bit further back, we've got Chris Keenan here chasing after Liam Tack, as behind it looks like Jack Wyborn getting very close under braking. But meanwhile, we look back up towards our leaders, and Matthew Prowting, well, right now just chasing after Jamie Doherty as they make their way through the sequence of corners. And Gareth Williams, well, Gareth Williams has been passed there by Alistair Kirk. We didn't quite see that on camera. I think it was in the run out of the chicane that Gareth Williams had a poor run, and whilst we can't go back to it, what we can tell you is the case that Gareth Williams has dropped a position as they all make their way down into turn number 9. Behind you see Lambert Wedder pulling out of the racing line. They're trying to take away a little bit of the toe to Paul Scott, the next gen racing driver, and the BMW behind him as they make their way out of turn number 9 and now make their way up towards the final chicane. They come roaring on up once again here, and as they make their way on down, we can see a little bit further back, we've got Gareth Mills here in P17, the AM driver, who's gained a little little bit at the start of this race, and as he makes his way into the braking zone right now, the GM Racing machine goes a bit too high in the apex and clatters the car, and Dan Murray will be looking to come through very shortly. But after the opening lap, it is William Fole leading ahead of Stephan Wessels in P2, followed by Jamie Doherty P3, Matthew Prowting P4, followed by Alistair Kirk in P5. Then you've got Gareth Williams in P6, followed by Mark Baker in P7. Then it's Paul Williams in P8, followed by Darren Doherty P9, and Sean Scoot P10, completing our top 10 with the two AM drivers there of Scoot and Doherty battling for P3 in their class. Then you've got Lambert Wedder a little bit further back in P11, 1.2 seconds back, followed by Paul Scott. And then we've got Nigel Stock behind, who hasn't gained really, but Nigel Stock right there after Paul Scott. Then Davide Favo P14, followed by Joshua Wiggins P15, Stuart P Taylor P16, Gareth Mills P17, next Dan Murray P18, and flashing his lights is Dan Murray, the Altitude Esports driver, wanting to come on through versus the AM driver of Gareth Mills, and Gareth Mills obliges immediately. He knows he's not racing Dan Murray in terms of points as they make the way over the crest and down through turn number 6. Elwyn Sykes meanwhile in P19, followed by Jack Wyborn in P20, and then we've got Mark Sykes coming in through in P21, gaining a place at the start of this race with 2 places. Liam Tack P22, and Chris Keenan has had an off and is now returning to speed, P23, last of our drivers. But meanwhile, as we look back up towards the front of the field, we can say it's no really change over the course of this lap by comparison with the previous one, as all of our drivers come rip-roaring on through. And I believe Jack Wyborn also had a little bit of a moment out on circuit, although he has managed to get back ahead of Mark Sykes, although we haven't quite seen what's happened. And now Gareth Williams trying to hunt down Alistair Kirk as they make the way through the final chicane once again to complete lap number 2. Now as they make the way towards lap number 3 at this point, now it's all about trying to get that momentum, get that advantage on the driver ahead of you as our drivers make the way under braking once again into turn number 1. And Gareth Williams at this point, I think he'll be thinking that Alistair Kirk will have a natural advantage given the mid-engine rear-wheel drive aspiration and layout of what is Alistair Kirk's car, but in return Kirk could be prone to overheating those rear tyres as he makes his way on through. But meanwhile, a bit further back, I believe we've got quite a battle building up here, and that's Jack Wyborn coming on through as Liam Tack has to go defensive here versus Mark Sykes, and Mark Sykes being left behind right now as they make the way up into turn number 2. And this is in the battle for what is P8 in the AM class, P20 overall, with Jack Wyborn just ahead as we ride on board the gearbox here, Jack Wyborn, and you can see how Liam Tack trying to give that pursuit, and Mark Sykes not too far back as these AM drivers try to work their way into what is one of the points paying top 10 positions as they make the way down towards turn number 5. They come down towards the final chicane. Will we see anyone go for a late move on the brakes? Well, we can. So, oh goodness me, Jack Wyborn there losing the rear. We just caught that from the gearbox. He put the rear right tyre onto the grass, and that turned him into the curb very early on. Fortunately for him, he got it back under control, but a mistake like that, if he keeps making that mistake, that is really going to hurt him in the long run, and he's going to be hesitant now under braking into that chicane next time around as he goes deep through 7, and this means that Liam Tack is only going to inch closer and closer as they make the way through 7 and up into 8. As they come through right now, it does look as though Liam Tack looking for the move, but Wyborn covers him off on the inside, so Tack will have to go around the outside here. He's going to try and commit. It's going to be hard. It's a right-angled right-hander, and as they make the way through the corner, you can see Tack has to back out in the end and watch and wait once again as he makes his way down towards turn number 11. But as they make the way on down, it is a case one more heavy braking zone, and Tack's going to look for it, but he's not close enough to send it up the inside and has to wait his turn. But we look from Tack to a little bit further up the road, and we see Joshua Wiggins here now hunting down Davide Favo in the hunt for P14 overall. The two drivers in different classes. We're looking at the pro driver Joshua Wiggins versus Davide Favo, the AM driver, and I think right now Wiggins just trying to get past Favo so that way he can begin to drop Dan Murray, who's behind him. And of course Wiggins right now P10 in his class, and he'll be worried that it's the case that he could lose that P10 if he's stuck behind Favo for too long as he makes his way down towards turn number 5. And as they come running on down this time, you can see Wiggins goes all in here on braking, but Favo, he gives him the space, and you can see that Dan Murray comes on through as Favo runs over the apex curve there, giving space to drivers, but Dan Murray with a lot more momentum, with Wiggins being forced to go in deep there to signal his intention. It is the case that Murray gains the place, and Stuart P. Taylor comes through as well, with Favo running over the apex curves, and well, Favo with that mistake has cost him dearly, because now he's got his fellow countryman of Gareth Mills who's battling for position in the AM class with him, and these two of course P4, P5 in the AM Championship, and they're very closely matched, only a couple of points between them. This is critical in terms of result. Every point will pay and count for these two as they make their way through turn number 9 here, and it's Favo ahead, but for how long Gareth Mills will be looking to try and come on through, that is sure, as they make their way down towards turn number 11. Well, as they make their way down right now, I can tell you up front, albeit we're not looking at it, William Fole and Jamie Doherty are now ahead of Stephan Wessels and hunting down the... Oh, goodness me! And that's Dan Murray with a spin there on the corner. Now, I'm not sure what's happened to Dan Murray, but something's gone very wrong. But meanwhile, as we look a little bit further up the road, it is the case with Dan Murray having the mother of all moments there. And, well, Dan Murray has jumped to the pit. Something has gone very wrong. Gareth Mills looking for a deep move on the inside there versus Davide Favo, but he can't find it as we ride on board with the Porsche driver as they make their way into turn number 2. Now coming on through at this point, I think it's one of those situations whereby it's Gareth Mills who's just going to be looking for that opportunity. He can put the pressure on Favo, but notice how by trying to signal that move into turn 1 and go for that lunge, he's actually cost himself a lot of time. But Favo very slow there out of 4, and now as he closes up behind the South African, he's going to look for the move. Or is he going to go for it late on the brakes? He thinks about it, but he decides not. There's plenty more opportunities. We're not even halfway into the race. I think Gareth Mills will be aware of the fact that if he cooks the brakes too hard in this Porsche early on, he's going to cost himself a lot of time as they make their way down towards turn number 7. They look towards the braking zone here. Both drivers immediately on the anchors coming out of 6, both 9. It's not worth risking it, and they want to nail their laps here as we see Mills continues to put that pressure on. The privateer trying to come on through as they come through turn number 7, now head up towards 8 as they make the way on up and over the crest here through turn number 8 and down towards 9. No change between them right now, and it does look as though they're exchanging lap time and just simply contesting the space around them as they come through turn number 9 and head up towards 11. As we look from them to a bit further up the road, I can tell you 2 AM drivers also having their coming together. It is Sean Scoot and Darren Doherty. We are seeing that Darren Doherty is still ahead in P9 overall, P3 in class. In the AM class, it's Sean Scoot who is just behind the racing team Astra driver as they make their way through turn number 1. Now as they both come on through here and head up towards turn number 2, it is the case that Darren Doherty doing everything he can to try and keep ahead. And of course trying to run as much pace as possible here as they both make their way around in equal machinery and up towards turn number 4. But Doherty just doing enough right now to keep Sean Scoot at bay, but will he be able to do it for lap after lap? We still do have the best part of 7 minutes. That equates into somewhere in the region of about 5 more laps to go as our drivers, including the lap they're on, as they make their way down towards turn number 5 once again. But as we perhaps predicted, overtaking has come at a little bit of a premium here in this sprint race. And it's the case that while we have had a couple of small incidents, nothing major, as we do see Mark Sykes making the move here versus Jack Wyborn into turn 4. And Mark Sykes and Wyborn have been contesting that P18 spot, P7 in the AM class for some time as they make the way all the way down towards turn number 5 here. And it's Sykes defending to the inside. Meanwhile, it is Wyborn on the outside there. And Sykes going defensive. It's going to cost both of them a bit of time as Wyborn now tries to get the overspeed in the run up towards turn number 7. But Wyborn's going to have to be very committed if he wants to go the outside to inside route, and he's looking for it. And Wyborn going all the way in. They make the way through side by side. Brilliant racing between them, and in the end Wyborn has to back out of it, knowing that 2 does not going to run through that chicane unless they give one other space. But Wyborn just not able to carry that momentum through, and Mark Sykes holds onto the position with a good bit of defensive driving as he makes his way down towards turn number 9. But as we look from them to a bit further back up the road, what I can tell you that right now Nigel Stock currently P13 overall, P9 in class, where he has dropped Joshua Wiggins to a degree, but he is giving pursuit of what is Paul Scott right now, as all these drivers have phased out a degree in terms of the relative space between them as they make their way on through the sequence of corners here. And it is the case that Nigel Stock just doing everything he can in order to be able to press on as he comes up towards turn number 4. As he makes his way through the corner, and as they come on through right now, we look a little bit further up the road, and I can tell you that Alistair Kirk right now in what is that P5 position, making his way in that pursuit of Stephan Wessels. Remembering, of course, here that Alistair Kirk, if he does pass Stephan Wessels, will gain an overall place, but he won't gain anything in the Pro Championship, given the fact that Stephan Wessels is right now in the AM Championship. So as a result, that will mean that there's no overall positional change, but as they make the way on up and through turn number 8 and down towards 9, it is the case that Alistair Kirk continuing to give that pursuit, but no major change between what is our top 5 right now as they make the way on through. Although you can see that Gareth Williams trying to inch himself a little bit closer with 5 minutes remaining as they now make their way down towards turn number 11 once again as they come into the braking zone this time round. It is the case that all of them still in that sequence as they make their way through and onto what is lap number 8, and as they come across that timeline, it is a situation where all these drivers just pressing on. But really, race leader right now, William Favo, he has got an advantage of 2.1 seconds over Jamie Doherty. He is inching that advantage out. That last lap from William Favo at 28.7. Meanwhile, Jamie Doherty, it was a 29.0. The 2 Audi R8 drivers exchanging lap times, but it's Jamie Doherty who's at the disadvantage as he makes his way up towards turn number 4. And coming on through the right-hander right now with 4 minutes to go. Jamie Doherty running very wide there, and that's going to cost him a bit of time and also perhaps be a track limit warning as he makes his way down towards the chicane, down towards the Kleiner chicane. Coming into that braking zone, and you can see it's a situation where Doherty just keeping it as aggressive as he possibly can, but one of the situations where he's got to be aware of the fact he pushes too hard and he could see his race into the bin as he makes his way up towards turn number 7 here. As he makes his way on in, we look back to what is Alistair Kirk here, who continues that pursuit of Stephan Wessels and just cannot find a way to close up to the back of the Ferrari driver enough to put that pressure on to gain the position and then hunt down Matthew Prowting. And it does look as though our top 5 just a little bit spaced out right now. We will wait to see if they come together right at the end as they make their way on down into what is turn number 9. As we get them all there in the camera shot, and we do have Gareth Williams and also Mark Baker, to be fair, who we haven't talked about recently, but the Team Tetra AM driver ahead of his teammate Paul Williams behind. And you can see Paul Williams here, and I do wonder whether this is a bit of a tactical display from the Team Tetra drivers, because we'd normally expect Paul Williams to be ahead of Mark Baker as they make their way around this circuit, just given the fact that Paul Williams is the pro driver for Team Tetra, but given he's running on a similar pace to Mark Baker, and it's the fact that Mark Baker has got 2 AM drivers who are behind Paul Williams, and that is Darren Doherty and what is Sean Scoot. I do wonder if Paul Williams here is just acting as a bit of a rear gunner, and that's just giving Mark Baker a bit of breathing room and a bit of confidence to think that those 2 are being held at bay, and Mark Baker has got that comfort room. Of course, I think Paul Williams, if the 2 behind really do try and come through, he's not going to fight it too hard because he won't want to lose time to Lambert Wedder, who's down in P11 and is the next driver chasing after him within the pro class. But it's just something to think about right now. I think Team Tetra once again displaying that tactical masterclass that we have seen from them time and time again in terms of that team strategy, because right now Darren Doherty and Sean Scoot just watching on here as they try to close up and get past one another and also get past Paul Williams. But I think it's going to be a tale to tell as they make their way around. And we look a bit further back here to Gareth Williams, who's trying to come after Davide Favo once again here. It is the case, the Porsche driver still in P17 and what is P6 in the AM class versus Davide Favo, his main rivals. Favo gets it horrifically wrong there, coming through the climb to chicane, and Gareth Williams gains the position in the end, and that is critical, putting him ahead right now, and that will give him an advantage. As meanwhile, oh goodness me, and what on earth has happened here as we've had a 4-way incident involving all the AM drivers right at the back of the field. And I think Wyborn and Sykes have had some sort of contact, and it's the case it is the case that then Chris Keenan and Liam Tack have just got involved in that one. Unfortunately, we can't bring you the replay of that one, ladies and gentlemen, due to software limitations, but it is the case that they have had a coming together, and that is not what we wanted to see as Chris Keenan tries to limp his way on around. But we look from them back up towards our leaders here as they are now onto the penultimate lap, as they make their way on through turns 1 and 2 and 3 once again here. But that was a bit of a disastrous moment for everyone involved a bit further back. But meanwhile, I can tell you, hold up a second, what's happened here? And Lambert Wedder and Sean Scoot have had a coming together into turn 1, and it is, well, both of them off circuit, and Lambert Wedder get himself back up to speed. But Sean Scoot, who was running very well in what was P4 in the AM class at the time, P10 overall, that has completely torpedoed his race. And it is the case that Sean Scoot now has got to try and recover this. He hasn't really lost out of position as such, interestingly enough. He's just lost overall position, but not class position. But I think Scoot will be a bit perturbed by that one, and we'll be thinking, where on earth did that come from, as they make the way down towards turn number 5 once again. That is not what he would have wanted, of course, because he was trying to hunt down Darren Doherty for the purposes of P3 in the AM class. And you see Darren Doherty here making his way through what is turn number 7 and heading around and up towards turns 8 and 9 very shortly as he makes his way on through. But as he does right now, we can see just coming down towards turn number 9. And speaking of drivers who've come down and through turn number 9, it is the case that our race leaders here make their way on through the final corner, and it is Crystal Autosports' William Foyle who takes us on to the final lap here as the white flag begins to wave. And it is the case they go on to one more lap of the Zolder circuit in this sprint, coming into turn number 1 here. And as they flow on through, we look to the closer cameras here as it is William Foyle who leads by 1.8 seconds over Jamie Dory, who pursues still and is trying to close that gap down. And Dory now starting to inch that gap in little by little. Matthew Prowting in P3, but our leaders staying as they were earlier on in the race. And meanwhile, a bit further back, I think Mark Baker has found a way past Alistair Kirk, and Kirk, I believe, has had an off at turn number 1. And of course, this change of position is only overall, it's not a class change. And Mark Baker, I think, will be very grateful for the fact he's now up into P6 overall, still P2 in the AM class, but I think it will be a day to think for him that he can beat some of the pros as well, and he will be smiling about that one as he makes his way down towards the first of the 3 chicanes. As he comes running down right now, we can see we've got a car parked off circuit. That is Chris Keenan parked out the way. They're letting everybody through with a damaged car. Liam Tack has gone into the pits, from what I'm hearing outside of my commentary box window. We can see a car going in. It is Liam Tack, but we won't be able to see that on camera. And as they make the way around right now, we can see Alistair Kirk here being closed up a little bit by Paul Williams, but no real closure in terms of through turn number 7. In fact, Paul Williams had a bit of a slow run through turn 7, just not able to get the car settled down. But meanwhile, up front, as they come all the way through turns 9 and 10 and head up towards turn number 11, it is the case that William Foyle right now making his way in towards the final corner, coming through turn number 11. And as he makes his way across towards that timing line. It's going to be William Foyle who takes the win in the sprint race here at Zolder in Lobby 2 as he crosses the line ahead of Jamie Dory. And it is Matthew Prowting who completes the pro podium, and it is Stephan Wessels who takes the win in the AM class, P4 overall, in another solid drive. Gareth Williams P5, and it is Mark Baker who comes across line P6 overall, P2 in the AM class ahead of Alistair Kirk, Paul Williams, and then Darren Doherty just finishing behind Paul Williams, P9 overall, P3 in the AM class. A brilliant drive from Darren Doherty, and our top 10 completed by Paul Scott. And then it is Nigel Stock who comes home P11, and behind him Josh Wiggins, then Sean Scoot in P4 with what was a moment that's cost him potentially that podium chance. Now Stuart Taylor P14, Gareth Mills P15, and then we have Davide Favo P16, followed by Larrett Wedder P17. These drivers completing the race on the lead lap, and then we had the retirements of Liam Tack, Elwyn Sykes, Chris Keenan, Jack Wyborn, Mark Sykes and Dan Morey. But my goodness, what a opening race. Perhaps not as eventful as it could have been in terms of what we may have hoped to have seen in the sprint here at Zolder, but I think it has set the tone in terms of how important that strategy is going to be in the feature race, because we saw William Ford, once he was ahead, just seemed to be unassailable. But right now, a lot of our drivers, I think, on very even pace, particularly our top 5 in the pro class, but it's all about who pits first and pulls it off. And well, we will have to wait and see. And of course, the big question will be whether Stephan Wessels can make it 2 out of 2 once again here in the AM class, and will the strategy pay off for him, or will Mark Baker, who's not far behind, it should be pointed out in terms of race pace, Mark Baker quite close to Stephan Wessels, will Baker be able to close him down? Well, all that and more we'll come to see in the feature race. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to take a brief moment to get ready for our post-race interviews with our race winners. Do not go anywhere, you will not want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, we're going to be conducting our post-race interviews with our sprint race winners, and we'll be starting off with our AM class winner, that is Stephan Wessels, as we bring Stephan into the interview. Stephan, are you there?
Hey Paul, yes, how's it going?
All good, thank you, Stephan, but more importantly, how are you doing, and well, how did you find that sprint race and the win in the AM class?
Um, it was a cool. I'm very happy with the victory. I'm happy I kept it on track, and wasn't an easy race being between all the pro guys. So yeah, no, lots of concentration, keeping it on track, and also not trying to get involved in other people's races. So yeah, I'm very happy.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And well, taking it back a step in terms of the qualifying session, a very strong qualifying lap right at the end. In the end, a 27.7, which put you 1/10 clear of William Foyle. Just in terms of that qualifying lap, was there a little bit more out there as well, or was it a case of yep, you nailed the lap absolutely spot on?
No, there's probably a good couple of tents still in there, but it's such a tricky track to get all. It's a very short track, and you would think it's not that difficult, but it's so difficult to get all the chicanes lined up properly because you just need to cut just enough, and if you cut a little bit too much in the first chicane, you get the curb will bounce you offline. The second chicane, it's so easy to get a off track, so it's very very tricky to get 100% to get your lap 100% right, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. It looks out there just from watching everybody drive around, yourself including, when it looks as though you're driving right on the limit and trying to get those limits spot on in terms of how much you cut and how much you do not cut. But then translating that over into the race, we saw at the start of the race, it looked as though you bogged down a little bit versus William Foyle in the run to turn number one. Was it the case that Foyle just seemed to catch you out, or was it more of a plan of, you know what, don't fight it too hard into turn one because these guys are in the pro class, whereas you're in the AM class?
So the plan was pretty much the same as last weekend, where obviously based on the practice sessions we had and qualifying, I knew I was running the same pace as the guys, a 10th here or there. So if I could get into the first couple of turns in first position without affecting them too much, I would then just try to stay there. But William had a very good start, so the moment we went, I knew he had me. So I didn't. I just tried to stand outside on turn one, and I actually think he was quite conservative, um, which meant that Dory was right up against me going into turn two. So I kind of just at that point I just fell into traffic, and I was sitting behind William for the first lap or two. I made one small mistake, got off track, so I had to slow down and let Jamie pass. And then it was basically the two Audis in front, me and Prowting behind me. And behind Prowting was a little bit more of a gap, to Alistair. So I decided to just let Prowting through and see if the three guys in front could have a bit of a battle. And I basically decided if Alistair could get within half a second of me, I would let him go. But I couldn't play too much of that because Mark Baker, who's my competition, was right behind him, so it wasn't quite that easy.
Oh, indeed, and that was what was just going to come on to it. Mark Baker seemingly almost on the pace with yourself. Were you thinking at some point, what if Mark Baker comes on up behind you, I get past Alistair Kirk?
Yeah, look, it's very difficult in that scenario because when you let someone go by, you lose a second. It's not like it's not a point one or a point two. When you actually give up a position, you have to slow down. You let him come by. You get back into the racing line. So it's very easy to lose a second in that scenario. So if someone is 2 seconds behind you, if you let a pro guy come past, um, in a corner or two, suddenly that guy's right in your bumper. So it's a different ball game.
Oh, most definitely. I could appreciate that. And now looking ahead to the feature race, given how difficult overtaking is at Circuit Zolder, what was the plan going into the feature?
Keep it clean, eh? Keep it clean, and yeah, just try and stay on track and not get too involved. So the idea was to if I get into any sort of little train of because overtaking is quite difficult here, so you get all these little trains forming, 5-car trains or so, and you can't just go past 5 cars. You can go past 1 car at a time, but when you get to a point where you've got 3 cars, 4 cars, nose to tail, it's not that easy to get past. So my aim was to kind of get into the pit window, and if I could get into my pit window before I hit the train like that, I would do my pit stop.
I see.
Yeah, that
Well,
was the strategy coming into this.
I see. Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature race, but until then, congratulations on another rather deserved and powerful win in the sprint, and this time at Zolder. Congratulations, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thanks, Paul.
So hearing there from Stephan Wessels, very happy with his performance, but he was talking about that balance, particularly at the start, with William Favo getting that good launch and essentially making a conservative move up the inside into turn one, and how that really put him out of position with Jamie Doherty just behind. But also, Stephan Wessels there, very appreciative of the fact that as soon as the pro got within half a second or so of him breaking off the pace and lifting off a little bit to let the pro on through, but then Mark Baker trying to build up some pace and right behind Alistair Kirk, and it was the case that then I think Wessels just simply having to manage that gap and make sure that if Alistair Kirk came up behind him, he wasn't going to let Kirk through and give that advantage to Baker. Very interesting indeed. It'll be interesting to see how the strategy plays out now over the feature race. But before we get to that, let's have a chat with our pro winner, and that is William Foyle. So as we bring him in now, welcome William, can you hear me?
Yep, mate, I can.
William, a great race from yourself from start to finish. It looked quite hard out there in the sprint at Zolder. How's it feel to have taken another win in the series?
Oh yeah, it feels really good. Yeah, it was nice to get a win in the sprint.
Well, with regards to the race itself, starting off with qualifying, set yourself up quite nicely, being the fastest of the pro drivers, but it wasn't an easy qualifying session by looks of things. It seems as though it was in the balance quite a bit with regards to trying to get that pole position.
Yeah, the Audi felt very tricky. It's I think, like you said before, it's quite a loose car and be quite tetchy, especially around this track. If you hit the bumps in the Audi, you were turned into a plane. So getting that right every lap was really difficult.
In terms of trying to get it right, when we went into the race, we saw at the start, you seemed to absolutely nail the start and get the jump on Stephan Wessels, but it looked as though you had to play it quite carefully in terms of making that overtake into turn one. Just take us through what was going through your mind on that opening lap.
Yeah, at the beginning, I was able to obviously get the Ferrari Stephan, and it was I knew you could go on green, so as soon as it went green, I was already itching to go on the throttle, and I didn't realise I'd be starting on the inside. So as soon as I got him, I was like, right, I can just try and focus on myself and being conservative. So that's what I did, and it was just basically trying to keep steady pace. So I was trying my best just to avoid the curbs completely, and just being conservative. But into turn one, the Audi's just tricky, I find, on cold tyres, and the brakes at the beginning on the rear, you just have to be so careful. So probably compared to the Ferrari, yeah, it did feel like I was being conservative.
Oh, indeed. And then once you got into the lead, Jamie Doherty came through quite soon after. It looked as though the two of you were exchanging lap times back and forth, but you just seemed to have a couple of attempts advantage when you were pushed to the limit. What was going through in terms of over the course of the 15 minutes? Because the gap sort of oscillated between 1 minute, it was about 1.5 seconds, then it would go up to 2, to 3, and then it would come back and down.
Yeah, I was managing the pace a little bit because I didn't want to push, make a mistake going over the curb possibly too harsh, and then getting a slowdown or half spinning because I knew it'd be right on me. So I thought it'd be easier in 15 minutes just to take it easy and sort of manage what I was doing rather than trying to push every lap.
I see, and well, it was definitely well managed all the way through to the conclusion, and he crossing the line in the end, the best part of 2 seconds ahead of Jamie Doherty. But now looking ahead to the feature race, you'll be starting towards the front of the Pro Pack, given your current championship position. What was the plan going into the feature?
Well, once again, it was to try and get a good start and try and see how many people I could get off the line to see where I'd end up, because I knew it was going to be tough in traffic. So it was just head down, basically, and see where I could get.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you got on in the feature race very shortly. But until then, congratulations on the win in the Pro class in the sprint, and thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing there from William Foyle, very happy with his performance there. And as he was saying, a bit of a conservative start. We'll look conservative, Audi versus Ferrari, but he nailed that start and wanted to clear Stephan Wessels, got ahead, and then just simply managed that advantage to Jamie Doherty from start to finish. But I do think some sparks may fly between Doherty and what is William Foyle in the feature race, given their respective paces and how hard they've got to push the Audi, but at the same time not over push it, particularly with those curbs. And over 60 minutes, getting those braking zones perfect time and time again is a very very tricky task. Well, we'll have to wait and see how they got on. Give us approximately about 4 to 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be back for the feature. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss it. We'll be bringing it to you very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in the build-up to race number 2, the feature race. We are only 5 minutes or so away from going racing once again, and as our drivers are getting themselves set up right now and getting ready to go racing, it is the case that every little bit of practice they can do now may help them in the build-up to the feature race. Now, what can we expect from the feature? Well, before we talk about that, we should say hello to those of you who have joined us since the sprint race, and during the sprint race we haven't had a chance to say hello to in the YouTube chat. That is Stiganator SA. I'm assuming that underscore SA refers to South Africa. Good evening to you, Stiganator. Also to Gareth Mills in the YouTube chat. We've also got their LolPower73526 in the Twitch chat. Good evening to you, LolPower, who was commenting on the scale of the crash involving the 4 AM drivers in the run out of 4 and down towards turn number 5 in the sprint race. We've also got there, well, I believe that is everyone. We've also got Alistair Kirk, who we say hello to in the YouTube chat. And that is just about everybody who has joined us since then. If I've missed you, I do apologise. And at the same time, if you haven't said hi, do not be shy. Feel free to say hi. We don't bite here as all our drivers make their way around. And we are still, by looks of things, having some slight issues with loading Paul Williams' livery. Unless he is running a dedicated next-gen racing livery, of course, which he could be, to be fair, in particular in the build-up to the Daytona 24 Hours. But I'm not 100% sure about that one. But it is the case that the Team Tetra Rouge driver running a different livery by looks of things as of tonight. As we can see there, Stephan Wessels saying that Stiggy is a fellow RTA member. Well, it's good to see Racing Team Astra tuning in their mass tonight, and that's absolutely fantastic. As we've also got Sean Scoot there saying hello, and well, good evening to you, Sean, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature race as well. We've only got 3 minutes to go now in this build-up, so what can we expect is the big question in the feature race. Well, we saw in the Apex Racing Academy lobby last night just how critical strategy was, and the biggest example of it was Callum Reid-Garton in the Pro-Am class, who came all the way from the back of the field. And in fact, once we have got some time, we are going to be quickly trying to fix our liveries. We will be seeing all of our cars go to white, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be fixing that for you because we would like to see if we can get those fixed. So we do apologise for that, and you are seeing some technical issues being resolved on screen right now, and lucky you guys and girls. And well, Paul Williams' livery is still displaying as Next Gen Racing, which is a bit irritating, but it does look as though that is the way it wants to play today. So we are going to have to, well, we're going to have to play with that. But nonetheless, what can we expect from this race? Well, we can expect it's one of those situations whereby the strategy is all important, because as Callum Reid-Garton showed us, the undercut and the overcut can be absolutely critical. Callum Reid-Garton went for a huge overcut, fuel saving all the way from the start of the race and pitting approximately the 40-minute mark, whereas some drivers such as Matthew Addy, the winner in the end in the AM class in the feature in Lobby 1, was able to conduct the perfect undercut, pitting around the 23-minute mark and undercutting his main rivals, which were Kurt Van Hoornacker and what was Navarro de Bova. But as we see our drivers making their way around, or was it Knocker? I think it was Van Hoornacker, but I may be wrong. It is the case as they push all their way around, they're just getting ready to go. Now, I see, Alistair Kirk, that's a question for myself in terms of what's my I rating. I'll be honest with you, I have not got an idea because, well, I've only recently made my way out of, I can't remember what classification it is, but the very most basic one that you start off with, and I've made my way into the one class above it after doing 3 races. In fact, I've done 4 races so far in iRacing, but I do need to spend more time behind the steering wheel. But if I spent more time behind the steering wheel, I wouldn't be able to bring you all of the racing action that occurs in the Next Gen Racing series. So a bit of a dilemma, but we do love bringing you all of the racing action in these series, because at the end of the day, if I can hear that you guys and girls are enjoying yourselves, then that makes it all the more worthwhile, as we are now only a minute away from seeing how everybody takes on the feature race. But indeed, it's going to be all about the strategy, I think, and also about getting the perfect start, and we'll have to see how our drivers do tackle it. And William Foyle right now will probably be one of the most best placed drivers in order to tackle it, because we know he's got outstanding pace. We know he'll be starting from the front of the field there in the Crest Autosport liveried Audi R8, racing for his team, of course, and that means put 2 and 2 together, he will have the greatest number of strategic options available to him. But then again, do not count out Gareth Williams, who was a bit of a half run in terms of the sprint race, in terms of we saw him there, but he wasn't really pushing in terms of all the way up the field. But I think Gareth Williams as well might be seeing this one as a race or a series of races tonight where, with the absence of Paul Walton, he's not going to be too worried about if he drops some points today, because he can always turn this round into his drop round, if you will. So I think here it's all about just seeing what he can do and, well, not being too worried if it doesn't work out. Of course, he's pushing, but I don't think he's going to push that BMW M4 to the limit and beyond, whereas he may do at other circuits. perhaps reserving a little bit of energy. As we look to Mark Baker parking up at the side of the circuit. Sean Scoot here making his way around in the racing team Astra Machine, and as he makes his way down towards that timeline, this final practice session is complete, and it is time to form the grid for the purposes of the feature race. Now, as we look to our grid, as it's formed very shortly here, we'll just be looking over towards our drivers. In fact, we can't quite see there due to what is the grandstand, but we can look to the blimpers. Everybody makes their way onto the grid right now. Unfortunately, due to the limitations of replay files, we cannot exactly bring you the grid standings as would be shown through the gridding screen, because that will be glitched. But what I can tell you is that in terms of starting at the head of the pro class, it is going to be William. Well, he's going to be towards the front. It may not actually be him right on the front. No, it's not him on the front. It's not William Favo. In fact, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, it is Jamie Doherty who starts us off from pole, and alongside him there will be Stuart P. Taylor, the Ferrari driver, who will be doing everything he can in order to try and get a solid result tonight, as the gridding procedure is already complete. And meanwhile, in the AM class, I believe it is going to be Jack Wyborn who starts us off from pole position in the AM class. Listed right now as P22, but we'll see our time screens update. In fact, it's Sean Scoot who starts us from pole in the AM class there, as all of our drivers pull off the line and make their way down towards turn number 1. Now, as they do, of course, they'll be thinking about their strategies, they'll be thinking about their plans A, B and C, and I think really for most drivers here, as they make their way around, they'll be need to be thinking of at least 2 strategies here. They'll need to be thinking about their standard strategy, what they're going to stick to, and whether it falls into the classification of an overcut or an undercut in terms of when are they going to pit. Of course, if they go deeper beyond the 30 minutes, it will be the situation whereby they will be essentially going for an overcut, whereas if they pit before the 30 minutes, they'll be going for the undercut. And if they pit dead on the 30 minutes, well, they're not cutting anything other than the race into 2 halves, based on the mathematics of 60 minutes divided by 2. But it is the case that right now drivers will be thinking about that, and also thinking about the reverse permutations. We may even see some drivers who were planning an undercut make that undercut go earlier if they are caught in traffic. And that's one of the big things as well, particularly Matthew Addy was talking about last night in his post-race interview, where what he found was he decided to pit because the AM driver who was coming up behind in the battle for elites, when he was coming up behind Davide in particular, he was finding they were going slower than him given the pace at the time, and the AM drivers behind Matthew Addy were getting closer. So Addy decided to take himself out of the equation by pitting earlier than perhaps anticipated and going for that ultimate undercut. And it showed because it worked in the end. He jumped the field and got himself into lead of the AM class with what was effectively 23 minutes of racing to go, and that was a stellar achievement. And could we see that happen again tonight? Whereas we see Stuart Taylor there in the YouTube chat saying hello, and indeed Stuart Taylor will be starting from P2 in the pro class here in this feature race. We look forward to seeing how he turns that around as he makes his way on through right now. It's been a bit silent from the TGC Racing driver in what's the sprint race. Perhaps he can have a little bit more of a feature race to shout home about. Of course, putting in everything he can, the TGC Racing driver, and then looking further down the order where it will be Stephan Wessels and Mark Baker who are on that final row together, and well, at the back of the AM class, both of them will be looking to have a great result here. And can Mark Baker perhaps keep the South African behind, or at least push him the distance here? We know how close their pace is over the sprint race. It was very close, and will we see it again? Well, KTM's in the Facebook chat seems to think that Wessels will make his way to take the win. If Dory keeps it clean in first and gets his pit right, he'll reckon she reckons he will get it. And Jamie Dory, who we look to here as they make their way in towards the final chicane. The safety car will pull on in, and it is for Jamie Dory to take us away for 60 minutes of races, a 60 minute of racing I should say, in this feature race. And it's lights out, away we go for the feature race as the hour commences, and our drivers make their way down towards turn number 1. And Stuart Taylor immediately going on the offensive into turn 1. Looking up the inside, William Favo as well, as we can see coming up the inside. It's Paul Williams there, going for a daring move on the inside, but he's a bit too tight and has to back out. But look at this, Nigel Stock coming all the way through, and Nigel Stock has moved all the way up into P3, and he's just snaked his way through the Ford GT. William Favo's got ahead as well, but it is the case that Nigel Stock has made a huge start to this race as they make their way down to turn number 4. A bit further back here, Lambert Wedder, he's got Alistair Kirk coming through on his inside here as the Dutchman goes a little bit deep, and he'll lose the momentum as they come running down towards turn number 5. And as they make their way in towards the Kleiner chicane, you can see the sequence of cars making their way on through. But meanwhile, Chris Keenan there, it looks so he's got Liam Tack looking for the move, and Tack's going to go very late on the brakes, and well, Chris Keenan's giving him the space to play with, but to be fair, Keenan's got it done as Lambert Wedder has had an off and returns to the circuit. Now, as meanwhile, Gareth Mills trying to cut on in here, the AM driver trying to make his way on through. And well, we're not right now able to make that move on Mark Sykes, but looking very intently as behind we can see Elwin Sykes there getting it mother of all sorts out of the position in through turn number 5, and right now he's got Davide Favo tucked in behind him as they make their way up through turn number 7 and up towards 9. But we look from them to a bit further up the order once again as we see Paul Williams now trying to go on the offensive versus Stuart Taylor. Taylor dropping positions, but as they make their way in towards turn number 11, I think Taylor was always expecting to drop 1 or 2 positions on the opening lap, and right now he's just going to start to keep himself up to a consistent pace. So after lap number 1, it is Jamie Doherty leading by only half a second ahead of William Fole in P2. Nigel Stott P3 followed by Stuart Taylor P4. Then it's Paul Williams P5 ahead of Paul Scott in P6. Then it's Alistair Kirk P7. Alistair Kirk going for the cutback on Paul Scott. He can't quite find it. He's made to go to the outside here into turn 2. Paul Scott's going to defend hard to the inside and hold the position, but for how long will it be before Alistair Kirk tries to sive his way on an undercut on the inside there of turn number 3, and he's going to go on through, and as he goes to the cutback it's going to work as now he moves up into the position and makes sure to shut the door, and it's the case that Alistair Kirk gains a place. So it's Paul Scott down to P7 now, Josh Wiggins in P8 followed by Gareth Williams P9, then it's Matthew Prowting P10, but as they all make their way down towards the chicane, could it kick off again as there's a little bit of contact between Paul Scott and Alistair Kirk, and Paul Scott runs up onto the apex curve there of the Kleiner chicane, and as a result he'll fall down. You can see here of Gareth Williams has come through, and Matthew Prowting also just about makes it before they come through 6 and down into 7 under braking. Meanwhile behind them, the leader of the AM class after the open lap is Sean Scoot in P11. He started off towards the front as he proceeds to continue. Jack Wyborn P2 in their class, P12 overall followed by Liam Tack, then it is Mark Sykes P14, Gareth Mills then in P15 followed by Lambert Weather in P16, then we've got Chris Keenan P17 as we've got Paul Scott having a major moment by looks of things. Well, Paul Scott is completely out of sorts here and dropping even further down, and right now he's got 2 AMs ahead of him as Jack Wyborn and also Sean Scoot gain the places on him as they make their way up into turn number 11 here. They come on through, and meanwhile all the way further back as all the cars come roaring on through, it is the case that right now everybody really settling down into that rhythm. But speaking of not settling down into the rhythm or not settling for seconds, we ride on board with William Fole, the Crest Autosport driver in P2 right now in the Pro Class and overall, as he tries to find a way on through versus Jamie Doherty. Now 2 drivers in equal machinery, they're both in the Audi of course. What this means is it all comes down to the driver and how hard they want to push as they make their way through turn number 4 and head down towards 5. But I think William Fole at this point will need to make a decision. Does he go for fuel saving or does he go all in and try and gain the position before they start to get into the next 10 minutes of this race? Once they've cleared the opening 10 minutes, we normally expect our drivers to shift into more of a strategy phase rather than an aggressive phase, and that's what William Fole's got to think about. Does he want to commit to that early, or does he want to try and get one more position and gain the lead of this race and dictate the pace for the Pro Class as they make their way through turn number 7? Well, he's not showing any signs of trying to overly close up right now, but again, he's going through one of the tighter sections of the circuit where overtaking is a bit too difficult, and I think it's going to be one of those cases where he's just going to wait and try and pick his way on through a little bit later on. But speaking of a driver who's got to pick his way on through, we can see Stephan Wessels here, the Racing Team Astra driver, trying to pick his way past Elwin Sykes now, his teammate. He's already gained what is 3 positions since the start as he makes his way up towards turn number 9. He's going to look for the move on the inside, and Elwin Sykes is not going to fight this one too hard, although I say that they go side by side through the apex of 9, and you can see just behind them Darren Doherty trying to come through versus Elwin Sykes, and they're going to try and turn it into a free wide, but the Irishman just loses out in the run, and he looks to the inside still as they come under braking. Doherty's going to make it too wide through the chicane, and he's now going to look for the cutback as Jack Wyborn has spun across the circuit there. It looks like Wyborn's had a moment, and meanwhile just at the head of your pitch you can see Gareth Mills looking for the move versus Liam Tack. The GM Racing Machine driver goes up against the other privateer. They make their way up in towards turn number 2, and as they come on into the braking zone, Gareth Mills has to back out here with the carbon ceramic discs really glowing already on that Porsche, and I do wonder where he's pushing those rear brakes a bit too hard at the moment, because it does look as though Mills is trying to gain those places. He's going after the podium here in the AM class, but will he be able to find a way past Liam Tack? That's the big question we'll have to wait and see the answer to as they make their way down. And you can see Lambert Weather here, the pro driver, trying to regain the positions that he lost earlier when he got it wrong, and Gareth Mills almost on the grass there and losing the rear end briefly as Mark Sykes has to back off. They're getting a little bit too close under the run through the chicane, and as they make their way down through turn number 6 and in towards 7, you can see that Sykes now just under that pressure from Chris Keenan, who is going to try and find a way on through as they make their way through the second of the chicanes. And as they come through turn number 7, you see Sykes running a little bit too wide there and taking some grass with him for a good sampling measure as they make their way up through 8 and down towards 9. Now as they make their way down towards the braking zone for turn number 9, you can see Stephan Wessels coming through versus Keenan. He goes very late on the brakes, but he's very tight in the apex. He gives Keenan the room, but Stephan Wessels up in another position. He's now up into P16, P5 in class as they make their way down towards turn number 11. Will we see Chris Keenan do a return move here? A little bit of home pride on the line, of course, of the Belgian Chris Keenan as he'll be making his way around. He doesn't go for it. Instead, he waits the opportunity and will look onto the next lap as they make their way out and onto lap number 5. But you can see behind there how Mark Baker now trying to find his way past Darren Doherty. It's the case the Team Tetra Rouge driver has not had it all plain sailing as he looks to the inside. He's going to go for the conventional move into turn 1. It's going to cost the pair of them a lot of speed as we see some gravel being kicked up there from one of the racing team Astra drivers. That's Elwin Sykes, has had a bit of a poor run through turn 1, and Mark Baker gains the position versus Darren Doherty, who doesn't try to come back into 2. I think Doherty realising there's more at stake here in terms of the longer term nature of the race as they make their way into turn 4, and Davide Favo just watches on from behind. Now as they make their way through the corner here, you can see how everybody's scrambling for position, and Mark Baker in particular scrambling to try and look for the move on through. He can't quite find it, but speaking of one driver who has found it, it is Joshua Wiggins who's gained the position on Paul Williams as they come through the second of the chicanes here, and the RD Simsport driver now looking to make a move on Stuart Taylor as they make their way around and down in towards turn number 9. But he's quite a way back, to be fair, with regards to Wiggins versus Taylor at this point in time. As meanwhile, where's Mark? Oh, goodness me, we've got a car on its roof. We have got a car completely turned over, and I think Chris Keenan involved in that incident. We've had 2 cars, I think Elwin Sykes as well. We're not going to be able to give you the replay of that. It's unfortunate we cut away when we did, because it does look as though those drivers very quickly came together. Keenan has jumped to the pits. Well, Mark Sykes is on his roof. He's definitely jumped to the pits as well, and well, that is a disaster for all involved. And well, with that, and Lambert Wedder, I think, has had a major off. As we can see, he's just bringing himself back up to speed right now. But here's Gareth Mills once again as they make their way onto lap number 6, and Gareth Mills really trying to come on through here. I think it's the case the GM Racing driver knows that in his battle for what is P3 in the championship versus his peers, well, more P4 in the championship versus Davide Favo right now, with Favo so far down the order. This is a great opportunity for Mills to gain ground, and as they make their way through turn number 3, we look past the tents here, and Gareth Mills just about gets ahead into turn number 4. A daring move. He's gained the position, but we ride on board the gearbox now as he looks to whether Liam Tack is going to try and come back at him into turn number 5. They make their way down, but Lambert Wedder is going to intervene, I think, here, if he's able to go for it on the brake. Oh, goodness me, and Liam Tack has got it very wrong into the braking zone. Now I think it's just a case of wheel on the grass, and Liam Tack has gone for a spin at the Kleiner chicane as they make their way all the way across the ridge now and down towards turn number 7. But meanwhile, as we look to Gareth Williams here, the next driver to put pressure on Paul Williams, the Team Tetra Rouge Ferrari ahead of what is Gareth Williams just behind. They come through turn number 9 and now make their way up towards 11. And as they do, we say hello in the YouTube chat to the Dr. Simpson. We hope you're doing well, Dr. Simpson. And it is the case that as our drivers make their way on the round right now, the key medicine they need to administer is a win to their points tallies as they make their way around through turn number 11 and down towards turn number 1 once again. And in terms of the battles for the lead right now, I can tell you that Jamie Dory and William Foyle are inching closer together once again. But the closest battle on circuit right now is between Gareth Williams and Paul Williams just ahead. Not related, these two. The Team Tetra Rouge driver ahead of the Next Gen Racing driver who's going to look for the move on the inside, and it's a conventional move into turn 2, and Gareth Williams just going for it now. I think Paul Williams knew it was going to come at some eventuality, and it's the case that the two Williams exchange position, and now as they make their way through turn number 4, it's one of those situations where Gareth Williams now needs to press on after Josh Wiggins, but you can see Wiggins here all over the back of Stuart Taylor as they make their way down towards the Kleiner chicane this time around. Now into the braking zone they go, and it does look as though Wiggins a bit sensitive under braking there into the Kleiner chicane. He doesn't want to push as hard on the brakes with regards to that Porsche. He wants to keep it nice and smooth, and to be fair, understandably so. The Porsche being a handling car, the suspension very sensitive to raised curves. A lot of these cars are, and we did of course hear from William Foyle with regards to the Audi just how sensitive a car is with these curves, and the Porsche being another one where as soon as it gets unsettled, you can imagine all that weight concentrated to the rear because it's classified as a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, but that engine is really towards the rear. You can imagine that weight gets shaken about. It is not going to settle down anytime soon as Matthew Prowting has made the move there. We saw in the rear view picture for P8 versus Paul Williams, and that's Sean Scoot, who is the leader currently in the AM class here, who's potentially sizing up Paul Williams, but he's going to be careful, of course, as meanwhile it is the case that Stephan Wessels makes his way past what is Gareth Mills, and what's happened to Gareth Mills? He's had an off, and he just about misses the tyre barrier as they make their way back onto the circuit, and well, Mills, who was doing so well to be running in P2 in class, he's throwing it down the order, and Davide Favo is now one place ahead of him, and what was looking to be an absolutely stellar run in his feature race has now become undone, and he's got it all to do again. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers who've got it all to do, here's the case that Sean Scoot right now losing the position to Paul Scott, and now he's got Stephan Wessels behind him. And to be fair, the two Racing Team Astra drivers, they won't want to hold one another up. They will want two of their drivers on the podium, if not all three, if they can afford it. As meanwhile, we look a bit further up the order from the podium runners in the AM class to a driver who's trying to get onto the podium in the Pro class, and that is Alistair Kirk, who we're right on board with, and he's giving pursuit to the Ford GT of Nigel Stock as they make their way into turn at number 7, into the second chicane. Now you can see Nigel Stock there getting very wrong on the entry. The Ford GT very heavy and cumbersome on its brakes compared to the much more nimble Lamborghini. Of course, both of these cars mid-engine rear-wheel drive, but the Ford GT is tailored for one purpose, and that is speed, whereas the Lamborghini is a bit more of an all-rounder. But as they make their way into turn number 9, the one thing that Nigel Stock will have to his advantage is he's got a very heavy car, which means when he goes onto these curbs, the curbs are not going to unsettle the car anywhere as near as much as what it will for the Lamborghini as they make their way into turn number 11. You can see under braking how Alistair Kirk able to brake so much later as Nigel Stock gets it very wrong, just unsettles the rear left tyre, and he brings the car back under control, and that shows you the controllability that the Englishman has in that Ford GT. But at the same time, as he flashes his lights here, I mean, he's flashing his lights to say, look, I'm not going to try and come back for this because I've made a mistake, it'd be dangerous for me to do so. But Nigel Stock, with one small error at turn number 11, has cost himself that P3 position for the time being, but I reckon Stock might be coming back a little bit later on. We know Nigel Stock loves to prime a good strategy, and time again, and we saw at Spa in particular, how in the Ford GT, which was running really off the pace, he still brought it home in the top 5, and he considered that post-race as the equivalent of a race win. As meanwhile, looking a bit further back, we can see Joshua Wiggins still tucked in behind Stuart Taylor as they make their way down towards the client chicane. He's going to look for it this time, Wiggins. He's going to commit, or does he? No, he doesn't quite. He waits that opportunity as we ride on board the gearbox here of Stuart Taylor as they make their way out of 5 and down towards turn number 7. Now, as they do so here, what can Stuart Taylor do to try and hold Joshua Wiggins back? Well, the thing he's got to realise, Taylor, is he's got a whole pack of pros behind him. It's not just Wiggins, it's also Gareth Williams, it's Prowting, and also Paul Williams. And what that means is, if Taylor gets it right with regards to utilising his defensive lines, he could potentially force Wiggins backwards into a battle with Gareth Williams. And Gareth Williams will want to get past Wiggins, of course. He will want as many points as possible, Wiggins, his teammate, being absent. And also the fact that right now Joshua Wiggins is gaining a lot of momentum in the championship, and he will not want Wiggins to carry that momentum forward into the rest of this season as they make their way down into turn number 11 here. So that's what Taylor could do, but you can see he goes a bit deep, does Taylor, through the corner, and as they make their way now on towards the start-finish line once again to go on to lap number 10, it is the case that Wiggins is going to be looking up the inside. I think Joshua Wiggins may have this. He won't have the drag race potential, but he will have the brakes, and as they make their way on in, well, Stuart Taylor did turn in, but he got a face on a Porsche there, and he gave the space as a result, and Wiggins has got the move done, but now it's about trail braking into turn 2, and Joshua Wiggins, with a brave move, the Briton moves up another position into P5 and will now try to break away and chase after Nigel Stock in the Ford GT, who is the best part of 4 seconds up the road. But now Stuart Taylor, of course, has to deal with the rest of the pack that bunched up behind him. It's Gareth Williams, it's Matthew Prowting and Paul Williams, and also a little bit further back you can also see Paul Scott just in the rear of your picture, and Sean Scoot just a bit further back there, and now Stephan Wessels trying to close him down as they make their way through the corners, and as they make their way now over the ridge and down into turn number 6 here, it is the case that the Pro class really intensifying. But as they make their way on through, we briefly take a look back further down the order, and what I can tell is at this point in time, and of course being cheered on by Dr. Simpson, who is a big fan and friend of what is Liam Tack here. We can see Liam Tack chasing after Elwyn Sykes here and looking for the move. He went for a very daring move on lap 1 versus Chris Keenan. It paid off, but I think Keenan saw it from a mile away and decided it was going to happen regardless, and Liam Tack right now, well, the bravest on the brakes, and as they make their way down through 6 and into 7, I think Elwyn Sykes has just got enough advantage right now to feel comfortable as they all make their way through turn number 7 here. And you can see the differences in lines where the drivers are either just riding over the curbs or they're clattering them, whereby it seems Elwyn Sykes is more sensitive to the curbs, but Liam Tack goes on a move here. He's got a lot of speed coming through 7 and into 8, and he's going to go very, very deep into the corner. Elwyn Sykes holds that defensive line, but it looks like Elwyn Sykes really struggled struggling to carry speed out of 7 in the run down towards 9, and it shows because Liam Tack has done what we don't normally see, and that is a pass around the outside into 9. It's rare it happens, but when it does, it's absolutely beautiful to see, and Liam Tack gains a place, and now Elwin Sykes has got Jack Wyborn trying to hunt him down as they make their way down towards turn number 1. Once again, they go on to another lap, and you can see now how Liam Tack is just gradually opening up that gap, but we look from them to right now the battle for P6 overall, P6 in the Pro class as well. That's Stuart Taylor who's still holding at bay Gareth Williams and Matthew Prowting, defending well, and as they make their way over the ridge right now, you can see Gareth Williams is going to dare what others would not, and that is to go outside to inside through 6 into 7, but he's not close enough, and to do that you have got to be brave and confident that you can outbrake your opponent and get your nose fully ahead. I've tried it myself, and I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, when you get it right, it's very satisfying. When you get it wrong, however, it's normally the case that you're going to be taking the driver on your outside for a tour around the circuit, and I mean onto the grass, and they're not going to be too happy, and the stewards will be wagging a finger at you afterwards as our drivers make the way on around once again. And as they make the way down, it's a case, I think that's Paul Scott there in a little bit of a moment with Paul Williams. I think the two drivers went side by side through turn 10, and it might be the case that essentially didn't have enough room for one another. And turn 10, you want a straight line, so as a result we would normally see everybody filter out into a single formation, but it is the case that Paul Williams feeling a lot of pressure right now from Paul Scott behind him as they make their way on towards another lap. They go on to lap number 12. And as they do so, Paul Scott really feeling that need to get past Paul Williams here. And I think he feels he's losing time to the battle just up ahead of him. And I can tell you that Stuart Taylor is still holding on here. His gap to what is Joshua Wiggins is opening up by a 10th every couple of sectors. But right now it's the case that Gareth Williams is the man who's got to find a way on through. As we ride on board here with Gareth Williams, the next-gen racing driver, our championship leader in the Pro class. He tries to find a way past the Ferrari in front. But is it vulnerable this time? He looks to the inside. He's not close enough once again. He has to back off as they make their way through the sequence of corners, and as they make their way down towards turn number 7, down towards the second chicane. It is again a story of two halves here where Gareth Williams, we do wonder whether he's playing a bit of a strategic piece and just trying to essentially save some fuel as they make their way through the corners with a very quick short shift there through the rest of turn number 7. That Ferrari ahead of him looking very large and very defensive as they make their way on around and down towards turn number 9, and Williams is going to look for him, but he's not close enough. He's trying to get Stuart Taylor to go deep, and he does outbrake himself a little bit. He's a couple of centimetres off of the apex line, and as they make the way now out to 10 and down towards 11, this is where Gareth Williams has got to keep throwing these dummies. He's got to keep trying to get in the mind of Stuart Taylor and get him to outbrake himself into a corner as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, the fastest lap of this race has just been raised to a 28.635. William Vole is on a charge up front, and as we look to our leaders right now, William Vole is only the best part of 6/10 off the back of Jamie Dory, but I do think that William Vole right now may be playing a game of putting in the occasional fast lap to stay with Dory, but not overdoing it. I think Vole may be thinking about the bigger picture here, because they started off like this, they proceed to continue, and William Vole right now is looking at very strong, but to be fair, Jamie Dory quite close on pace as they make their way into the Klein chicane. But as they make their way on in this time, once again in that battle for P6, we can see that it's a similar picture as before, but now Matthew Prowting's a bit closer, and this is where I think that pressure is going to be put on to Gareth Williams, because if Prowting gets closer, now, oh goodness me, and I say they get closer, well, it's the case one driver won't be getting closer anytime soon. It's Joshua Wiggins who's got it wrong at the chicane, and well, that has cost him dearly, as now it is the case, I believe Wiggins has jumped to the pits and is out of this race, and that is very unfortunate for the RD Simsport driver, who through one mistake has seen him drop all the way down, all the way, and retire the race. Well, that is unfortunate for RD Simsport. They would have been hoping that it was Wiggins who could bring them some huge points today in the feature, but it wasn't to be, and right now that promotes everyone behind the position as Stuart Taylor outbrakes himself into turn number 9, and now as they make their way back up to race speed, he's lost 2 places, and it is Matthew Prowting who has gained behind Williams. And can Paul Williams now find a way on in? I don't think so at this point in time. I think he's got to wait and witness as they make their way through turn number 11. Now, as they make their way out to the corner here, it is one of those situations where I think for all of these drivers, now they're heading towards that 20-minute mark. Now the big question will be, who's going to flinch first? Now, when I say about flinching, what do I exactly mean for the uninitiated? Well, when you're racing this close to a driver in front of you in the same class, well, I say that, and Paul Scott looking for a daring move on Paul Williams, and he's got the move, and that, now that was quite far back. To be fair though, Paul Scott went for it. He didn't overcommit. He decided to commit enough to get the signal through to Paul Williams, who's going to be on his inside. And to be fair to Paul Williams, he gave the space. He could have perhaps turned in a little bit earlier to try and shut the door, but it would have risked contact. But in the end, great racing between these two. And you can see Paul Williams trying to put himself on that inside line into the chicane, but he's not close enough to do it. Paul Williams loses the place. Paul Scott with a great move up in position into P8 overall and P8 in class. But what we were about to say before that move was pulled off there, it was a good point to cut away. It is the case that with regards to Flinch, and you can imagine with all these pro drivers in particular running so close together, as soon as one of them pits, it may trigger a whole series of pit stops where essentially a driver who pits initially may trigger the other drivers around him to think that guy's going for the undercut. I need to react as Paul Scott and Taylor come into contact into turn number 9. And well, I thought Paul Scott was looking on the inside a bit, but Stuart Taylor, well, his race has gone from good to bad to the grass as he's all the way now down in P11 overall, P9 in class, and that's very unfortunate for the Briton as he makes his way up towards turn number 11. You can see here Lamont Wedder taking a look, and Stuart Taylor immediately decides, you know what, I'm coming into the pits, I've had enough, I'm going to go for the pit stop as early as possible. And I think he's gone the earliest he possibly can with pulling that trigger, and he's got nothing to lose now with that incident he's been involved in. But look at this, Mark Baker in P3 in the AM class here, trying to get past the pro Lamont Wedder as they make their way through turn number 1. He can't quite find it at this point in time, but as he looks into 2, he considers it, and then he backs out at the last minute as he makes his way through turn number 2 and coming on through. But Stuart Taylor now really will be the trendsetter in regards to the pit stops, and it's very unfortunate the way it's played out for him, but he's got nothing to lose. He may as well gamble it. But speaking of someone who's got everything to lose, Jamie Doherty now under pressure for the overall lead, and indeed the pro lead versus William Foyle. Foyle was up the ante. And as they make their way down towards turn number 9 here, you can see here's the case. In fact, I think there's some damage on Dory's car by looks of things. That front right panel is crumpled from the driver's perspective. It's the front left from your perspective when we look at him head on. And you can see just on the left-hand side, it does look as though the front bumper on that side has been compressed very heavily. And I wonder if Jamie Dory's made a mistake, tapped a wall, and he's racing with a wounded car right now, because that is not a good-looking Audi R8 right now. And as they make their way across the line to go on to lap number 16, Jamie Doherty really feeling that pinch. And that last lap, to be fair, both drivers only separated by 0.2 of a second in terms of their lap time. Doherty with a 29.5, Foyle I should say, with a 29.3. I think it's the case if Doherty's had an incident, it must have been earlier on. It's not affecting him too hard because they are lapping in similar pace as they make their way on through and around and down towards turn number 4 once again here. And as they come on down right now, it is a situation where for both of them, they'll be looking not to push one another too hard, because if they do, they could be at risk of taking one another out, and then it would be P3 man Alistair Kirk here who would gain massively from it right now, as the TGC racing driver just seemingly being that ever-present threat. A bit further back, he is 6 seconds off of the leaders right now, but to be fair, in terms of his lap time, he's matching them for pace at this point in the race. Now, could it be, of course, that he's having to push a bit more than Dorian Foyle? Maybe it is that case, or maybe it is the situation where he's not pushing as hard and just gradually evolving into this race. We don't know, but what I would say right now is that Alistair Kirk has got a lot to play with, and he's got some comfort. He has got some space for the guys in front. He's also got some space for the guys behind, and what that means for him, he has a bit more strategic variety available to him. Whereas I can tell you that Matthew Prowting, by comparison, well, he does have some strategic variety in the form he could pit before Gareth Williams and decide to force Williams into a potential counter undercut scenario, but right now Matthew Prowting does have some tools at his disposal, but he's got to be aware of the fact that Paul Scott is only 2.5 seconds behind, and Paul Scott at this point in time is running on quite fast pace as both drivers make their way down towards turn number 11. As they come into the braking zone here once again, no change between the two BMW drivers here, both matching one another very nicely in sequence as they come out of 11 and on to another lap. Now, as they do, what I can tell you is that in the battle for the AM class lead, it is Sean Shute who is ahead of Stephan Wessels, who is closing, Sean Scoot, I should say, not Shute, getting his surname wrong like we previously used to. We're going to get it right from this point onwards, I promise you. It is the case that Scoot right now doing everything he can to try and find his way past Paul Williams and matching the pro driver for pace very well as they make their way through 2 and up into 3. But it is the case that right now Scoot's fellow countryman at Wessels and his teammate is inching ever closer lap after lap. And I think doing some fuel saving with it to boot. Meanwhile, a bit further down, well, the rivalry between these two, it's in the championship, and indeed it is a rivalry that we love to see, and it's Gareth Williams who gets very close to the back of what is Davide Favo as they make their way down towards turn number 4. But once again, Mills is able to close, but he's not able to come on through as they make their way down towards turn number 5. And at this point, I think one of the problems that Mills is experiencing, he's got the handling versus the Ferrari, but he doesn't have the acceleration or the straight line speed, and that's what he needs to get this done. He needs Favo to have a mistake in order to gain. And remember, Mills much earlier in the race was running P3 in class until he made that cataclysmic error into what's turn number 9, where he ran incredibly deep, got it wrong, and right now where it is the case that Gareth Mills just pushing on as much as he can and trying to close down his fellow AM class driver. This is critical because every point matters between these two in the battle for P4 in the AM standings come the end of tonight, with only 3 rounds remaining after this round at Zolder as they make their way on through turn number 9. And meanwhile, what on earth has happened here? We've got Stephan Wessels always. Stephan Wessels into the pit, and Sean Scoot has carried on around by comparison. So Wessels deciding to pit early. He's gone for the undercut here, I think, just to give himself some clear space on track when he comes out of the pit. But he's one of our early pitters again. We're not seeing too many pit stops yet. We've also seen Chris Keenan come in, but that's with damage to the car, much like with Mark Sykes and Joshua Wiggins, of course, retired from this race. As we look from what is one of our top AM class drivers in towards one of our top Pro class drivers at this point in the race, that is Jamie Doherty here, who is making his way on through. And as he comes through at turn 7, it is the case that William Foyle once again very close and looking very intimidating as they make their way out of 7 and up towards 8. Now as they come on through here, it is the case, will we see either one of them pit soon? Well, in terms of lap times right now, we are seeing that Foyle is making a habit of staying very close to the back of Doherty. I think he might be trying to get Doherty to react and pit. He might be trying to force a pit stop out of Doherty. We'll have to wait and see with regards to that as they make their way down towards what is turn number 11. They come on through, and I am hearing that what is Gareth Mills has found a way past Davide Favo. We haven't seen where it's happened out on circuit, but the two drivers have exchanged places, and it's the case that Gareth Mills has now got ahead. He's up into P4 in class, effectively P5 we believe, given that Stephan Wessels has recently pitted, but Gareth Mills is on a crusade now to try and break away and go hunting down Darren Doherty, who is only 4.5 seconds up the road. But meanwhile, an interesting one into the pits, and we did talk about the man with the greatest number of options available to him. Alistair Kirk, the TGC racing driver, is in with 3 minutes before the halfway point of this race. As we can see, Liam Tack going for a fresh pair of tyres there. He's up on the jacks, but I suspect most drivers will be opting not to change tyres. As meanwhile, we look now back up towards our leader here, and it's Jamie Doherty who takes us into the Kleiner chicane. Now, as he makes his way on through at this point, he has opened up the gap to William Foyle quite nicely this time around. I think Foyle had a bit of a poor run through turn number 5, and as they come up into 7, will we see Foyle try to close up as dramatically as possible? Well, it does look as though Foyle is pushing it to the limit and then to the envelope and then some more as they make their way through turn number 7 and up towards 8. Now again, it could be the case that Foyle has decided, right, I'm pushing a bit too hard, I'm getting too high at the front temperatures or the rear temperatures on the tyres, and as a result I need to back it off a little bit. It could be the case that he's trying to lull Jamie Doherty into a full sense of security, or he's just decided to do some fuel saving on his own. Perhaps he's changed tack, perhaps he's realised, okay, Doherty's not going to react and go for an undercut in order to try and cover off Foyle, so instead it is the case now Foyle will be looking to fuel save behind him, make both of them go a little bit longer. There's all those mind games that are being played, and of course we don't know what's going through the heads of these drivers until we speak to them in a post-race interview, but right now Jamie Doherty just seemingly very comfortable in leading this race. Meanwhile, William Foyle, I think he's of two minds, William Foyle. He's getting close at the end of each lap, but as the lap goes on, he stays close for a while and then he has to back off. I think he is hitting the wall of hot air, and as a result, that's just causing the temperatures to go beyond the optimum window for the Audi R8, and it's a very sensitive car. We've talked about it time and time again, and Foyle right now in that position whereby he has to manage the car a little bit more because of the dirty air off of his opponent. Now, what I would say is I think William Foyle doesn't want to pit because he wants to see the Pro Pack behind him pit, and when we talk about the Pro Pack behind him, we are talking about the likes of this man here, P3 man currently, Nigel Stock, the Englishman in the Ford GT. Also, we are referring to Gareth Williams, who is just ahead of Matthew Prowting. As the camera spins around, you'll see Prowting just behind him. And the reason for that is because you can imagine that if William Foyle was to come out behind these guys, and to be fair, William Foyle has got an advantage over Nigel Stock of 14 seconds, and if you keep adding it, essentially for that pit stop, William Fall is going to come out somewhere in this battle from P7 up towards P3 or just behind it. If he then closes up to the back of this and then has to fight his way past these drivers on circuit, that will completely scupper his race. I mean, that undercut was worthless. So that's what I think Fall and Dory are very aware of at the moment. If they were to go into the pits, they would come out at the rear of this battle and find themselves having to soldier their way on through it, and that's not what they want. So instead they're trying to go long and wait for these guys to pit. I would say as soon as we see at least 2 of these guys in the battle for P3 pit in the Pro class, then we will see our leaders consider those pit stops. But right now they're not going to even dare pitting, and to be fair, we're just reaching a halfway point to this race as well. So it is the case there is still a lot on the table. There's a lot of cards still to be revealed, and it is the case it's all about the poker face right now with regards to who is going to pit and when. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers who, well, are trying to push on, and well, they've yet to pit as well. Elwin Sykes here making his way up towards turn number 7 and trying to close down Jack Wyborn as they make the way through turn number 7, and Sykes goes very deep into the corner, gets it all out of proportion and loses half a second for outbraking himself into the turn 7 chicane as he makes his way on through. But as he makes his way now down in towards where it's turn number 9, I can tell you that Davide Favo, another racing team Astra driver, into the pit from what was P12 overall, effectively P4 in the AM class, and of course battling with Gareth Mills, who's decided to stay out. So Favo is reacting now and deciding it's time for the undercut at the midway point of the race versus Gareth Mills. But to be fair, this could have just been a scheduled halfway stop, and now Gareth Mills, I think, will have to push on this lap and try to nail this one if he decides to pit at the end of it to cover off Favo, his main championship rival. Or will Mills stay out longer and hope that he's got clear air to play with and no more mistakes to come? He of course can gamble on that. He can try and take the fuel tank up to about 40 minutes or even a little bit longer. We'll have to see what he does plan come the end of this. Meanwhile, we look from him to a bit further up in the AM order, and we can see that Sean Scoot's still leading by what is a reasonable margin over Darren Doherty of 10.2 seconds as he makes his way through turn number 9 here. And the racing team Astra driver just in a little world of his own right now, and I think reveling in this opportunity to lead the race for an extended period of time. Do remember, however, that his teammate Stephan Wessels decided to pit after 23 minutes. So as a result, Wessels going for the ultimate undercut, and we would imagine that Wessels right now could be on course to come out ahead of Sean Scoot when the pit stops are complete. But there's still plenty of time and still anything can happen. Wessels could find himself in traffic, he could make a mistake, Scoot could do the same, of course. Anything can happen here at Zolder as they make the way around through turn 1 once again in the form of Scoot, and ahead of him Paul Williams. Paul Williams there being matched by the AM driver behind him, but Paul Williams putting in a very consistent race, and to be fair, those lap times continuously in the low 29s, and that's not to take away from the great driving that the Pro Team Tetra Rouge driver is displaying here in his Ferrari as he makes his way through turn number 4. But as he makes his way on down right now, meanwhile we look back towards our leaders here, the stalemate of course, as, hold up a second, I do believe we have had a little bit of a moment here. Darren Doherty has got ahead of Sean Scoot, and Scoot, well, what has happened to Scoot? I think he's had an off track somewhere around on circuit, and he's had an off track, I'm being informed, ladies and gentlemen, in my ear, what was turn number 2 through to 3, decided to go for a bit of rallycross, and that means the Irishman, Darren Doherty, the Altitude Esports driver, is now into the lead of the AM class, and effectively looking at a potential P2 in the AM class here if our predictions are correct when everything is said and done. But meanwhile we look back to the leaders, and it is the case as they go on to lap 23. We now got Jamie Dory under a lot more pressure here from William Foyle, and Foyle was up the ante once again. He's turned it up to 11, and it is the case that William Foyle has closed up, and I think this is a sign that perhaps we're going to be seeing Foyle come into the pit soon. Perhaps he's getting ready and he wants to be close behind Dory when he comes on in to put the pressure on Dory and make it literally about nailing the perfect pit stop and the perfect outlap, or the perfect in-lap in the case of Dory's case, if it is Foyle who pits first. This is very close, and we haven't seen this for a couple of laps. Foyle has definitely now reignited the flames, and as he makes his way now, I think we've got Sean Scoot coming into the pits. We have indeed, looking out my commentary box window, so he's coming in from P2 in the AM class. And as the Crest Autosport driver here of William Foyle continues that pursuit, you can see now he's trying to attach himself, get right in the road trails of the slipstream of what is Jamie Dory, following him around through the lap as Jamie Dory gets it a little bit wrong on the exit there of turn number 7, and William Foyle will carry that momentum now in the run up through 8 and down towards 9. They make their way into the braking zone at this point as they come on in once again here. These two have been in sequence for so long, and to be fair, you would be forgiven for thinking that they're not really battling one another right now. It's a huge strategic battle in their hands. It's literally a chess match right now between these two. They're both waiting for the other to make the move, and as they make the way into turn number 11, no change once again, but Foyle clatters the apex there on entry and just keeps the car settled together. But you can tell Foyle now is not leaving anything up to chance. He is going all in as they make the way onto another lap here, and right now Foyle is the man with the plan, as we're hearing that Stephan Wessels has already got himself up into P4 with that early pit stop, getting him ahead of Sean Scoot, who made that mistake, of course, cost himself time. So Stephan Wessels right now on course to retake the lead of the M class in this race once the pit window is all done. But we stay here watching the battle for the lead overall, the lead of the Pro class as well, as they make the way on through the corners. They come on through what is turn number 4, and I believe Jack Wyborn has had a bit of an off, and goodness me, Jack Wyborn has had a huge off there just a bit further up the road going through the Kleiner chicane, and we can't take a look back at it unfortunately, but he's lost out massively as the AM driver, as we see him trying to get back up to speed, and that car is very heavily wounded. He's been into the wall at the Kleiner chicane, there's no doubt about that, and it's the case that right now Jack Wyborn will be trying to nurse that Ferrari back home to the pits. He's yet to make a scheduled stop, and he is really struggling right now to bring the car in front. You can see he moves out the way of the leaders who are coming through, the blue flags waving like mad, as right now Jamie Doherty and William Foyle continue their pursuit of one another, making their way through turn number 9. As they come on through, and we can see Sean Scoot as well coming on through past what was the wounded vehicle of coming past the wounded vehicle Wyborn as they make the way on around, and Jamie Doherty still staying out, and it's the case William Foyle still staying out with him. Meanwhile, just behind in the battle for what is P4 in the AM class, what we can see is the situation whereby we do have Gareth Williams inching ever closer to the back of Nigel Stock as they make the way under braking into turn number 11. Will we see anyone go into the pits? Gareth Williams does go in. What about Matthew Prowting? Prowting's in as well, so Nigel Stock's going to go longer than them. They're both going for the undercut versus Nigel Stock, and also to be fair, now 36 minutes into this race, those fuel tanks will be nearly dry, and as a result we are going to be seeing now, I think, the big shake-up in terms of all the pit stops. Everybody trying to outlast one another here. Most drivers have decided to try and go for what they would theorise was the overcut in terms of staying out longer than everyone else, but with so many deciding to stay out long, what it's actually done in this race is essentially it's turned it into who can go the longest and stay out one more lap. And will we see pit stops go wrong? Will we see pit stops go right? That's the question, as Nigel Stock right now, where everything's going right for him in terms of just keeping the car together as he makes his way down into the Kleiner chicane once again. And we've got a car spun there. That's Davide Favo with a major moment at the Kleiner chicane. The chicane catching out a lot of our AM drivers in particular tonight, and even some of our pros to be fair, and that was Joshua Wiggins of course, who we lost earlier on at that corner. As we can see now, Davide Favo getting back up to speed, and it's not going well for the South African driver, who right now in the battle with Gareth Mills, who's yet to pit to be fair, but Davide Favo has pitted. Gareth Mills is looking on course to come back out ahead of Favo when he's made his pit stop. But as we see Favo coming down under braking here, is the case he makes his way through the corner. We see Stephan Wessels just coming out ahead of Lammert Wedder, who's just completed his pit stop, and Alistair Kirk has got back out ahead of the Dutchman as well. And this is critical for Alistair Kirk, who was the one to make his pit stop earlier than most in the pro class. He was P3 before he pitted, and we can see Jack Wyborn there into the wall, and that's a disaster for Wyborn going out to turn number 4 with a wounded Ferrari and just keeping out of everybody's way as they make the way on through. I think really right now the big challenge for Alistair Kirk is, can he jump Prowting, Williams? Well, in fact, he hasn't jumped Prowting and Williams, I can tell you that, because he's come out behind them. As we see Prowting and Williams have emerged on the pit lane, separated by only a second, and Alistair Kirk is the best part of 10 seconds behind them. It has not gone right for Alistair Kirk, as Gareth Mills is into the pits from P2 in the AM class. That was P7 overall. He's coming for his scheduled stop, and this is to cover off Davide Favo and get the fuel in the car. He must be almost dry, as we see Liam Tack there going across the timeline, a lap down versus Gareth Mills, but soldiering on all the same. But meanwhile, in the battle for our pro lead and our overall lead, we can see it's still Dory ahead of Foyle as they make the way down to turn number 9 for what is now the 26th time of asking. They come on through, and as they do now and make the way up towards turn number 11, who is going to go first? They must almost both be dry here, and it is Jamie Dory in. What about William Foyle? He stays out. William Foyle goes one more lap. Now with William Foyle going one more lap, This flips the dynamic somewhat, and the reason for that, as he makes his way on down towards turn number 1, is that because William Ford has decided to stay out and he's putting the fastest lap of the race on that one, a 28.345. If we assume they've both got the same pit stop time here and they're literally identical, it will be William Ford. If he puts in one more lap like that and continues to set the timing sectors purple, William Ford will get the jump here, and this is how critical it is as Jamie Dory right now makes his way to his pit box. Nigel Stock stays out as well. He's been doing quite a bit of fuel saving that Ford GT, and we can see in the YouTube chat there Stuart Taylor clarifying that Alistair Kirk spun a few laps back and that's why he's 10 seconds back from the pack. Thank you for clarifying, Stuart Taylor. We didn't quite see that, but that makes sense. And now as a result, well, that's Alistair Kirk's race and his opportunity for a potential podium thrown into the works right now, thrown into the wind, but we will wait and see. Now as we see Nigel Stock making his way down towards turn number 5, Jamie Dory emerging from the pits here, and he's looking as though he's going to have clear track. He's going to come out in clear track, and what that means for is William Foyle. Foyle has got to nail his in-lap, because if he doesn't and Jamie Dory gets himself right up to speed here, then it is going to flip the complexion and William Foyle will not be able to make what is this overcut work. He's got to push every bit. Remember, they are both staying. Well, we suspect that William Foyle will do the same as Jamie Dory and not change tyres, as meanwhile Paul Scott and Paul Williams are coming out of the pits, and it's Paul Scott ahead of Paul Williams here. And Paul Scott is going to come on out just ahead of Alistair Kirk. But meanwhile, Alistair Kirk here, I think he's going to be coming out very close to what is Paul Williams. And I think he's just come out behind Paul Williams. Yep, there is Paul Williams indeed as they make the way through the corner. And you can see that Paul Williams has just gone out ahead of Alistair Kirk, who's lost that time. It's going to be Kirk who immediately goes on the move here. And Kirk wastes no time in getting back into P7 to be fair. He's not hanging around. But now here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The big pit stop is here. It's William Foyle in from the lead of the race. Nigel Stock has come in as well from P2. Nigel Stock, we suspect, will drop down the order somewhat. We'll wait to see where he comes. Where is Jamie Dory? Here is Jamie Dory making his way out to turn number 9, through 10 and up towards 11. It's going to be very close between these guys as we see Dory making his way down into turn number 11. We can hear that Stephan Wessels has made his way into the lead of the AM class, with all the AM drivers now having pitted and taking their mandatory stop. But Jamie Dory now coming on through, and as he makes his way through, William Foyle is leaving the pit lane. He's across the pit limiter line. He can go up to speed now and drive as quickly as he can to make his way out. Where is Dory? There's Dory. He's coming through turn number 1. I think William Foyle's done it. I think he's done enough to make the jump. Or has he? There's William Foyle, and Jamie Dory is just behind. And as they make their way through turn number 2 and into 3, it is Jamie Dory who has lost out by pitting first, and William Foyle in the end has nailed it. But the gap between them is only 9/10 of a second. Can Dory close down Foyle whilst Foyle's got to get those tyres back up to temperature over the course of this lap? We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, where is Nigel Stock? Well, Nigel Stock versus Gareth Williams, and Nigel Stock has just come out ahead of Gareth Williams. He's done enough. And now it's all about, can Nigel Stock hold on to the podium here? It would be a rarity, but it would be a classic to see Nigel Stock get himself on the bottom step of the podium in the Ford GT. But I think Gareth Williams is going to have something to say about that. But he hasn't quite got the acceleration to challenge the Ford GT as they make their way down towards the climb of chicane. And as they come on through, this is where Stock has now got to deliver. Every lap from this point onwards has got to be perfection defined as they make the way down into turn number 7. It's the same from Williams, but the difference is Williams has got to find a way to mitigate the raw beast that is that Ford GT as they make the way out to 7 and up towards turn 8 and 9 as they come roaring on up. Meanwhile, I can tell you that in William Foyle versus Jamie Dory's case, in the battle for the lead, these two are right on top of one another, and Jamie Dory giving that pursuit as we ride on board here with the second of the two Audi drivers as they go on to another lap. And Dory immediately looking for the move up the inside here. He looks for it. He's tentative. William Foyle gives him the room. And with Foyle giving him the room, they'll now make their way in towards turn number 2. And as they come into the braking zone, he's going to try and go all the way round. But Foyle parks on the apex. He knows what he's doing, Foyle. He knows to make Dory have to go all the way round and then some. And as they make their way side by side through 3 and up into 4, it's Foyle who defends here. But they're going to make their way on through. They're still side by side coming through 4. They head down towards 5. And it's Jamie Dory with the overspeed as they make their way down towards the climb chicane. It's building up to a classic, and as they make their way into the braking zone, Jamie Dory retakes the lead. He goes a bit high on the apex though, and as they make their way through, you can see Dory immediately peels to the outside for 6. He wants the defensive line into 7. William Foyle comes back on through. Dory looks him back under braking, and there's contact between the two of them, and they're both spun. Jamie Dory just going a bit too deep on the brakes. Now they've got to get themselves back up to speed, and it is Jamie Dory who is ahead of William Foyle. But where's Where's Nigel Stock in all this? He's a bit far back, but now they'll see their sights on the leaders with Jamie Doherty now back into the lead, albeit the stewards might be wagging a little bit of a finger at that one, and we can see that William Vole now 2 seconds behind after contact there, causing the 2 leaders to go sideways across turn number 7, but now Nigel Stock, well, to be fair, if Nigel Stock can keep up this pace and keep Williams and Prowting behind him, there's no reason if the leaders have another moment of contact or another moment of madness why we couldn't potentially see the Englishman go all the way in for the win here as they make the way around. We still have 16 minutes of racing left. Would you believe it, ladies and gents? We have got tons of time left and anything can happen in the time remaining as we ride on board the gearbox here of Nigel Stock's Ford GT as he accelerates down towards turn number 1. Now making his way down towards turn number 1 at this point, again you can see the gap he opens up versus Gareth Williams in the acceleration zones, and that is where this Ford GT just shines so strongly as they make their way in towards turn number 2. Now what can he do at this point, Nigel Stock? That is the big question. Well, I think he's just got to rely on nailing lap after lap, and it's Gareth Williams who really has to think about how he closes down this advantage that Nigel Stock seems to have. But Stock runs a little bit wide there up onto the gravel, and that's the first sign of a mistake and the first sign of where Williams can gain the advantage. He's got to be flawless, and he's got to try and find a way to get close enough to force that move under braking as they come through the chicane. And you can see all 3 drivers there with Matthew Prowting just behind, nailing that chicane to perfection. And Matthew Prowting, whilst he's been silent once again and really running in the wheel tracks of where's the drivers in front, he is right there in P5 mounting that challenge, and he almost loses the rear end on the exit of the chicane there. Just a bit of snap oversteer, and that shows you how hard Prowting is pushing to stay with the 2 in front. As we can see Nigel Stock here under that pressure versus what is Gareth Williams. He went slightly defensive and then had to return to the normal line, and they make the way out of turn number 10 now and down towards 11. And once again, my goodness, this is going to be incredibly close as they make the way down into 11. And if it's going to be like this for the next 15 minutes, well, I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to have a voice left by the end of this, because these guys right now are pushing things to the extreme as they make the way onto another lap. They go on to lap number 31, approximately another what would be somewhere in the region of 10 laps, including this one to go. And as they make their way through turn number 1, you can see Gareth Williams pushing every track extremity to the limit. It is the same for what is Nigel Stock and Prowting, just hanging in there, watching right now and waiting as the RP Motorsports Pro driver as they make their way down towards turn number 4. They come on in once again, all in sequence, no change this time. But the only key thing that really is changing right now is in terms of those microscopic movements of the wheel, in terms of can they push a little bit harder or do they have to back off? Are the tyres getting too hot? Only the drivers will know about that one as they all press on. But meanwhile, to go away from this very briefly and apologise, we do have to. It is the case that Gareth Mills right now ahead of Sean Scoot, who had that mistake earlier on. Gareth Mills trying to hold on to P4 in class as he makes his way through turn number 3 right now, making a recovery. And well, if he was to finish behind Sean Scoot, he'd still beat Davide Favo, but he would lose major ground on Darren Doherty, who's in P3 in the championship, and just up the road as we see the Irishman here making his way down into the Kleiner chicane. We'll have to wait and see how that one embroils in due order as we look back to Gareth Mills here making his way on through, and very sweet there through the chicane versus what is Sean Scoot. But both drivers, to be fair, pushing it to the utmost limit. And well, we have got some battles on our hands for the mid packs and the top 5 of the respective classes as they make their way on around the Zolder circuit. The sun may be coming down right now, but I can tell you one thing, nobody's feeling sleepy. Everybody wants to go racing still. And well, speaking of a little bit of racing between classes, we can see here there's a bit of an unfortunate situation whereby Stephan Wessels, the AM driver, is sandwiched in between the pros, Paul Williams ahead of him and Lambert Wedder behind. And you can see here Wessels enjoying a little bit of racing, but he's got to go for it here because look who's a bit further back in the picture. That's Mark Baker, the Team Tetrage AM driver here, as Wessels tries to go all the way around the outside. Paul Williams defends, but he doesn't have the traction. And now what about Lambert Wedder, because Wessels has made this move work, but Paul Williams cuts back there and perfectly slots in behind, trying to go for the cutback. And to be fair, these 4 all showing great racing class here as they make their way through the corner. But it is the case right now as we're hearing that Sean Scoot has had a major off and has essentially been dropped by Gareth Mills. So as a result, that battle will not be materialising anytime soon. But you can see how Mark Baker at the rear of this pack really wants to come on through and go hunting down what is Stephan Wessels here. He wants to win in the AM class as Mark Baker. He doesn't want to be Mr. Second Place. He wants to win just as much as the South African. And as they make their way down through 6 and into 7, no change right now. He's got to really wait for Wedder and Williams to deal with one another or try and force his way on through. And this is very frustrating for the Team Tetrage AM driver as he makes his way through turn number 7 and up towards 8 and 9. But as we look from them back towards that battle for what is P3 in the Pro class, we can see it's still Nigel Stock ahead of what is Gareth Williams as they come to the end of their current lap. Now as they accelerate across that timeline once again and make their way all the way down towards turn number 1, it is that situation where as they do, no change between these guys, but they just continue to stay in the wheel tracks of one another. It is the same, of course, that battle for what is all good speed. I think it's finally come almost there. Gareth Williams getting a bit closer, a little bit more assertive under braking. But speaking of assertive under braking here, Lamont Wedder hunting down what is Paul Williams here. We ride on board with the BMW driver as he looks to try and force his way on through here into what would be P9 overall, P8 in class, and right now tucked in behind the throwing Paul Williams. Whilst he hasn't had the pace, to be fair, he's been able to show a very good and sensible driving style all the way throughout here. What we come to expect from our pros, of course, being in that class, and as they make the way on through, it is the case. We look from them back to our battle for P3 in the pro class here, and we can see that Nigel Stock this time under a lot more pressure coming through turn number 7, and Gareth Williams is there right on the gearbox as they make their way through the right hand and they come up towards turn number 8 once again. And I can't bear to imagine where Gareth Williams is going to go for the move. He's going to have to go for it from so far back because it's the case that Stock is just able to nail these runs out of the corners, and that's what's keeping him alive. It is his ability to get that Ford GT pointed in the right direction and accelerating all the way out to top speed as they make their way through the final chicane here. But we can see Stock goes a little bit deep. It's not the perfect line, and as a result, as he now tries to bring himself around and through onto another lap here, will we see another opportunity arise? Well, Williams is right there. He's not close enough once again, but it's in these opening 4 corners where Williams has the advantage, and that's what Stock will be aware of. He'll be cognizant of the fact he's weaker through these corners, but he gets it hooked up very nicely this time through turn number 2 and makes his way up to speed once again as they come roaring on through and down towards turn number 4. Now as they make the way on through, meanwhile it is the case that in their battle nothing has changed other than the fact they're inching ever closer. Meanwhile in the battle for what is P8 overall, we can see that Stephan Wessels is just very gradually creeping away from Paul Williams, who has to deal more with Lamont Wedder behind. And then Mark Baker just... Oh, goodness me, and Mark Baker's into the wall there on the run out of turn number 2. I think he's pushed it a bit too hard and the car's let go. But meanwhile, looking for him, that's very unfortunate for Mark Baker, who's dropped the position to Darren Doherty. We look back to this battle for P3 as the camera switches back over, and I can tell you that Gareth Williams is close again, but not enough in order to go for the move. But meanwhile, speaking of close enough and looking for the move, Lamont Wedder looking for the move on Paul Williams as they come into turn number 7. No change between these guys right now. And again, just waiting in the wings as Lamont Wedder waiting to pounce here. And with that pressure of Mark Baker behind him taken away, I think it's now an opportunity for Lamont Wedder really to start to look for that move. It's very unfortunate for Mark Baker, who I think was hoping for that P2, if not that shot at the win in the AM class. But it seems to have not gone his way once again. Meanwhile, as these guys make their way on through, I can tell you that right now Gareth Williams is much closer. Nigel Stock goes defensive for the first time into turn 1 in a very long time in this race. Nigel Stock is feeling the pressure now as Gareth Williams is there. He looks inside and Williams just backs out once again. I think he's considering just putting his nose in like a big toe into a pool of water. He's considering putting his nose right on the inside of that Ford GT, but he just cannot get enough of the car alongside right now, and Nigel Stock just has a way to stay ahead. But at any moment you can imagine that Matthew Prowting would love an opportunity to get into this battle as well. Because as they make the way now for the climb and chicane this time, we've now only got 8 minutes remaining, and now here it comes. It's a drag race down towards turn number 7. It's Gareth Williams on the outside, Nigel Stock on the inside. But as they switch places, it's the case that Gareth Williams goes to the move and he gets on the inside into the chicane. I think it's the case that Nigel Stock had a poor run as he loses the rear end a little bit more. Is it the case that the tyres have fallen off the cliff on the Ford GT? Nigel Stock doesn't look as comfortable as he once did, and as he now builds himself back up to speed, it is the case. I think Stock has finally been opened up. I think a chink in his armour has been exposed, and now Gareth Williams will try to break away, as we're hearing that Sean Scoots had an off and has dropped further down the order. He's dropped down to P16 overall, what is P6 in the AM class. But we focus on our picture right now, and it is the case that Nigel Stock now under pressure from Darren Doherty. Not Darren Doherty, my apologies, Matthew Prowting. I know I've got Darren Doherty on my mind. I'll tell you about that in a second. But right now it is the case that Matthew Prowting will now need to try and find his way past Nigel Stock as they make the way onto another lap. They go onto lap number 36. There's only 7 minutes to go, and including this lap, that's 4 more laps remaining. And right now, the reason why I say Darren Doherty is because he's got Mark Baker gradually trying to close up behind him. But Mark Baker is a long way back, 5.8 seconds. I think he'll feel safe. But meanwhile, one driver who won't feel safe, he's at the foreground of this picture. That is Paul Scott, who's being chased by this man who we're focusing on more, and that is Alistair Kirk, the TGC Racing driver, who is trying to recover after a spin that cost him that P3 position after the pit stop. So you can see Alistair Kirk flashing his lights furiously here. I wonder if he's trying to distract Paul Scott, or alternatively tell him he's not going for the move into the chicane. Well, regardless, he doesn't go for the move and instead just waits for another opportunity as they make their way over the ridge and down towards turn number 6 and in towards 7. You can see Paul Scott really not on the ball with regards to that exit speed by comparison with Alistair Kirk as they make the way on through. But it is the case the TGC Racing driver now confronted by a hot wall of air as they make the way through 7 up towards 8, and that's cost him a little bit of time as they make the way down in towards turn number 9. Now, as they come on through under braking, it's a situation where with these guys very close together, we could expect to move at a moment's notice. But I can tell you one thing which we may expect to come back at a moment's notice, the battle for the lead. Because remember, after the incident between Jamie Doherty and William Foyle, it was the case the gap between the two of them opened up to about just shy of 3 seconds. Now it's the case that gap has come back down to 1.4 seconds. William Foyle is closing, and he's been closing up at 0.3 of a second a lap, and at this pace, he will be there on the final 2 laps to try and go for the move. As meanwhile, we are hearing that off circuit is Mark Sykes, who's had a run off out the final corner, and Liam Tack, I believe, is now coming up behind him once again here. Liam Tack is a place ahead already, if you will, but right now not a good day for Mark Sykes, the NXTGEN Racing orange driver. As meanwhile, hold up a second, what's happened here? It looks as though Jamie Doherty's had a very poor run out of the Kleiner chicane, and William Foyle has taken the lead, and that's literally a moment's notice. And I do wonder whether it was a mistake from Doherty or whether Doherty's decided to yield the position given how close these two have come back together, and now they go racing once again. I think it might be the latter, because Doherty's now all over the rear of William Foyle and going racing once again. I think Doherty just showing the respect for the incident that was triggered earlier on. Of course, Doherty just getting a bit wrong under braking into turn number 7, multiple laps ago, but now they are battling for the lead here with Crest Autosports. William Foyle leading ahead of NXTGEN Racing's Jamie Doherty behind in P2 as they make the way through turn number 11 and head down towards turn number 1 once again. Now, as they come running on down at this point, it is the case that William Foyle will be feeling that pressure burning down his neck, and it will be the case that Jamie Doherty will know he's got to this time get it done without the contact. He kept it close, they kept it clean for the most part, but he won't want to make it 2 out of 2 in terms of contact as they make their way through turn number 2. 4 minutes remaining, 3 laps to go, including the one they're currently on. We are going to be seeing approximately 41 laps in this race, or 40 laps as they make their way around right now, and we can see that Doherty just keeping that pressure on, just completely planted there behind what is William Foyle as they make their way down towards the Kleiner chicane. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Alistair Kirk still chasing after Paul Scott. TGC Racing trying to bear down on the NXTGEN Racing driver in the BMW ahead of him, but no change between these two. But Alistair Kirk is the faster of the two drivers. It's just he's now hitting that wall of air, and it's the case he can't quite find an overtaking spot where he's got that overspeed to go for the move, and that's why it's not working out at this point in time. Meanwhile, Lambert Wedder looking for the move versus Paul Williams here. He's the closest he's ever been. As they come down to the braking zone, he's going to go for it. It's the Dutchman as he looks on the inside. He'll go for it under braking and he'll get it done. Now, will Paul Williams come back in on exit in the run up towards 7? No, I think Lambert Wedder's got it done. Paul Williams drops down to the P10 overall. That's P9 in class. Lambert Wedder gains a position to P8 in class as now they make their way to the end of this race, we would suspect. As meanwhile, a bit further up the road, after seeing his fellow BMW driver of Gareth Williams get on through, it's now the case that Matthew Prowting may be thinking, what have I got to do to get on through? And behind them, well, you can see Alistair Kirk here thinking the same way versus Paul Scott as he's all over the back of Paul Scott. Paul Scott goes defensive into turn 11, and it is the case that Kirk's going to try and go around the outside. In fact, he cuts back in and he looks to get a better exit out the chicane here. They've only got 2 more laps to go, these two, and as they make the way across the timing line this time, Alistair Kirk salivating at the prospect of getting himself into P6 in class as they make the way into turn number 1. But as they come on through, it is the case that I do think that Alistair Kirk at this time will need to find somewhere a little bit unconventional to go for the move, because it's not worked out so far as he tries to now get into the very close range behind what is Paul Scott as they make the way in towards turn number 4. Now, as they make the way through, you can see Alistair Kirk, they're just falling back a little bit, just trying to circumnavigate what is that dirty air coming off the back of Paul Scott's car as they make the way in towards the braking zone for the corner. But as they do that, we do look up the field right now, as I believe Matthew Prowting going for the move here versus what is Nigel Stock. He goes outside to inside through what is the turn 7 chicane. We normally see it's inside to outside, but he gets it done. And then meanwhile, Paul Scott versus Alistair Kirk. Alistair Kirk and Paul Scott have come together, and Paul Scott gets it horrifically wrong at the chicane and goes for a spin, and that is very unfortunate for Paul Scott, because Alistair Kirk has now gone so home to P6, and Paul Scott is going to come down the field. And I do think that Paul Scott's got an issue with the car. He's trying to get it back up to speed, and it's not going anywhere any time soon. That is very unfortunate for Paul Scott, but it does seem as though it's all come to a head on the penultimate lap. Well, speaking of final laps, the leaders have gone on to the final lap, and as they make the way up into turn 2, it's the case that William Fall ahead of Jamie Doherty, and he's got an advantage of 1.8 seconds. And I think at this point in time, William Fall will now know he's got it all done, as Doherty is going slower and slower here. I'm wondering if Doherty's got a fuel issue, because that gap has just opened up massively, and I think Jamie Doherty might be able to do a lot of fuel saving to get that Audi home. He seems to run it to the edge, because if we look at the times, he is literally dropping seconds left, right and centre, as we're hearing that Paul Scott has come into the pit lane with damage to the car after that runoff. Something has gone wrong for Paul Scott, and it's all in tatters. And meanwhile, Jamie Doherty, another one of our Next Gen Racing drivers, I think it could be close to tatters if he hasn't got fuel to finish this lap, as he makes his way through the turn 7 chicane. Meanwhile, Nigel Stockwell, he's trying to pursue Matthew Prowting after Prowting made that adventurous move around the outside here only a lap ago, and he pulled it off with aplomb. And Nigel Stock doing everything in his power to try and find a way over through, as they make the way through what is turn number 7 and up towards 8. But meanwhile, we must cut away from them to our leader, because as he makes his way down to turn 11, he flashes his lights. He knows he's done enough, and as he makes his way through the final corner, it is going to be back-to-back victories of William Fall as he crosses the line. Your winner in the feature race here at Zolder in Lobby 2, our pro winner ahead of Jamie Doherty in P2. Great battling between these two, and Jamie Doherty making it to the line, and then Gareth Williams will again present himself on the podium, this time in P3. Some more good points on the board. Matthew Prowting comes home P4, Nigel Stock P5, Alistair Kirk will be coming around in P6 when all is said and done, recovering to P6 given the damage limitation effect, and then it will be Stephan Wessels who comes home to make it 2 wins out of 2 in the AM class here at Zolder, as he crosses the line there comfortably in P7 with Lambert Wedder in P8, Paul Williams in P9, and then it is Darren Doherty who, as he makes his way on through right now, it wasn't the perfect race, but it was close enough, and the Irishman will come home P10 overall, P2 in class, with a solid drive for Darren Doherty ahead of Mark Baker, who will be ruining that mistake, and also the situation that cost him a chance at a potential win in the AM class. Meanwhile, Gareth Mills comes home P12 there, and we can see Liam Tack cross the line P18 a lap down, as we see Stuart P. Taylor meanwhile making his way up towards the final corner here. And Stuart Taylor, well, it has been a difficult race. It started off well, but in the end, it didn't quite materialise the way he wanted it to. But he'll still come home in the top 10 in the pro class. He comes home P13 overall, P9 in class. It's a good race from Stuart Taylor. And it'll be Davide Favo, who has missed out versus Gareth Mills today, P5 in class, P14 overall. And Paul Scott, well, after that mistake coming down into the turn 7 chicane, he came into the pits to do work on the car, and he will be finishing P15, the last of our drivers to finish on the lead lap as he crosses the line there. And then it will be Sean Scoot, Elwyn Sykes, Liam Tack, Mark Sykes and Chris Keenan who complete our finishers, who made it to the end. And we lost Jack Wyborn and Joshua Wiggins due to retirements earlier on in the race. What a race, ladies and gentlemen, from start to finish. And this man right now, William Fall, must be absolutely up and down in that cockpit in terms of joy, in the fact he's pulled off a brilliant pair of results today. His championship campaign can only get better, and he's had to hold off very fast charging competition from Jamie Doherty. Gareth Williams, however, whilst he'll know he didn't have the perfect day today, and it was perhaps a missed opportunity with the absence of Paul Walton, it is the case he's still got a huge advantage over Paul Walton because of the fact Walton was not here, and that means that he can consign this result to a drop score if needs be. And well, what a day at the races for them. And meanwhile, for what is Lambert Wedder, it wasn't the race that he wanted today perhaps, but still some great battling through and through as he makes his way into the pits. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back very shortly for our post-race interviews with our race winners. Don't go anywhere. We'll be hearing from William Fall and also what is Stephan Wessels once again, and we'll be hearing their thoughts with regards to their feature races. Coming right up. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, let's get our post-race interviews with our feature race winners underway. And it's a double pair of double winners today, with William Foyle taking the win once again in the Pro Class and Stephan Wessels taking the win in the AM Class. And we're going to be starting off by hearing from William Foyle, and importantly, hearing about his battle throughout the race with Jamie Doherty. Welcome once again, William, and congratulations on your win in the feature race. A brilliant drive from start to finish from yourself. How's it feel to have made it back-to-back victories at Zolder?
Yeah, it feels really good. Once again, something that I was not expecting, especially around a track like this.
When you say you weren't expecting it, just take us through what were your expectations going in tonight versus how those expectations have been exceeded.
Well, I thought, honestly, especially in the feature, I thought I was going to get stuck behind the guys in front of me. Pretty much what happened to the rest of the field. So Nigel and Stuart and a few others, I was thinking they're just getting stuck behind them possibly, and just Jamie was going to pull away, and then the guys leading the championship be all over me. But that's not what happened. So it was great to get the start I did get.
Well, indeed, it was a brilliant start from yourself, and it looked as though in the end it was quite a close contest between yourself and Jamie Doherty, literally from lap 2 onwards. The two of you were exchanging lap time. But I do have to wonder, we saw there were moments where you got very close to the back of Jamie Doherty, almost as if you were ready to put a move on, and then you seemed to back off, let the gap open up to a second, and then get closer again. Were you doing quite a bit of car management in that scenario?
Yeah, we were really managing the pace. We were just fuel saving the entire way, basically until the pit stops, because we were gapping the traffic anyway. Seemed to be gapping everyone, even though we were fuel saving. So I was doing that the entire way, and then every so often I'd push a little bit and close the gap back up. And Jamie was doing the same, where he would possibly every now and then do a push lap, and then he'd back off the pace.
And with that fuel saving in mind, we then saw the very interesting scenario whereby we saw that Jamie Doherty was the first out of the two of you to pit, and with him coming into the pits, we saw you set an absolutely stellar fastest lap of the race. I think it was a 28.3, which shattered the fastest lap of the race by the best part of 4 attempts. I take it as soon as you saw Jamie come in, literally your mind went, right, it's go time. We've got to go all the way now. Yeah,
I knew on my fuel calculations I could have done another 2. But if I pushed it, it'd only be 1. So I pushed it as hard as I could. As soon as he went in the pits, I was like, right, if I'm going to overcut him, I've got to push as hard as I can, because it's going to be the lowest the fuel's going to be, and the tyres are going to be the best they're going to be for the fastest lap. So I went for it then. So I got the jump on him, but he was not too pleased about that, I can assure you.
Well, we definitely saw that in the fact that Jamie came like a raging bull up behind you, and really like a bull to a matador trying to hunt down the lead. There was great battling between the two of you though, and it went a little bit wrong going into turn number 7 into the second chicane. Just take us through that from your perspective.
It was a very close battle coming out the pits, because it takes roughly a lap for the tyres to get up to temp in the Audi, and it really did show how fast he had to close up, because I was very nervous coming out the pits. And when he did close up, he was straight on me going for the overtake. So I did my best to defend, but he was right there. And coming into the second chicane, I braked, and crew chief went clear on your right. So I turned in for the corner, and I think Jay just went for the dive for the inside to try and keep it side by side, and I didn't see it coming. So we made contact, and the spin just happened.
I see. And then with that contact, of course, we did see that it was the case that you both made your way back up to speed. And when you closed up to the back of Jamie Doherty, we saw that he was going quite slowly after the Kleiner chicane, or the first chicane, when you two came back together. Was it a case that he'd made a mistake, or he'd lifted off to let you on through?
He made a big mistake. He was riding the curbs the entire race, and it was something I really did not want to do in the Audi. I was doing my best to avoid them whenever I could. And he clobbered them, one too many times, and it basically sent the car up in the air, and he got basically a slowdown penalty for it. So it allowed me to close back up, but I was doing my best to do that anyway, because did like 3 or 4 laps, I think, did 28.4, so I tried my best to close that 2.5 second gap that had opened up because of the accident.
When you did close up, of course, and then made your way for the lead, just take us through that feeling, taking the lead off of Jamie Doherty and then running it to the end.
Oh yeah, it was really good. It was a really close battle. So it was probably the best win I've had so far in the series. A really great battle with Jamie.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And now looking ahead to next week, Monza, of course, the Italian Cathedral of Speed. How are you feeling for the low downforce high speed circuit?
Yeah, I like that track. I love the old classic European track, so it's going to be a fun one, and hopefully the Audi should be good and it's big V10 coming to life there.
Oh, well, we look forward to hearing that V10 scream in your capable hands in a week's time. But until then, congratulations on your double win tonight as of the Zolder circuit. And, well, thank you for joining us in the interview room once again.
Thank you, Paul. Have a good one.
You too. So hearing there from William Vol, very happy with his performance, and again you could hear that in terms of the pace at which Jamie Dory came on when Vol came out ahead of him out of the pit stop. But to be fair, Vol put in an absolutely brilliant in lap, and in return Jamie Dory reacted with a very strong out lap, and both drivers, it was only natural they were going to come together. And despite the contact, we got to see a fantastic race between them, and it was Foyle who emerged the victor when the checkered flag fell. But now we go from one of our double winners to our other double winner, and that is Stephan Wessels. Let's bring him in once again to hear from him regarding the feature race. And as we bring Stephan in, welcome once again, Stephan. How does it feel to be a double winner in the AM class at Zolder?
Paul? No, it's good. It's good. Wasn't an easy race. Very difficult track. And yeah, coming from the back, wasn't easy.
It did look very difficult out there, particularly towards the end, but we'll start off with the beginning. You made quite a bit of progress quite early on in the AM class in terms of cutting your way through the field. It looked so a number of drivers seemed to have just been struggling with the pace early on. Did you find it was quite a straightforward affair in terms of cutting through, or was it sort of you had to sight particular overtaking corners to get the job done?
So I think one or two of the moves was due to guys perhaps getting wrong-footed by the guy in front of them. And then some of the other moves were just a case of lining it up, working on a corner exit to get the moves done. But what I do want to say is all the AM guys in this race, at the beginning of the race, it was really slow, but it was slow for a reason. The guys were so respectful of each other. There were no dive bombs, and I mean, it was just so awesome to race with all the AM guys because we all just everybody. If someone makes a move, we give space, and no one makes a silly move. And it was actually very cool. The first couple of laps were so clean, and it was just due to the guys knowing it's our race. It's a difficult track, and everybody just respected each other. So yeah, it was a really cool experience to do that.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear, and it did look fantastic out on circuit. Despite some drivers going a little bit slow or getting it wrong in the corners, definitely right there with the amount of respect and racing room being shown between drivers throughout. And indeed, I think that materialised for some fantastic battles. But with regards to your battles in particular, we saw you go for quite an early pit stop. I think you were the first AM driver to pit in the sequence about 23 minutes in. Quite the undercut. Was that always the plan?
Yeah, so what I said to you earlier tonight was I would go until I get to a train. And what happened was I had Sean Skitter in front of me, and in front of him was Paul Williams and Paul Scott and one or two other pro drivers. So it was a case of Sean couldn't get past them because they were already, there was like 4 pro drivers ahead of him. So he couldn't really like stick a nose up there because the guys were all nose to tail. So I told him that I'm gonna go till I catch up to you guys. I actually told him to pit early as well, but I think he just wanted to stick it out a bit longer. So I basically told him I'm gonna go until I get to the back of you, and then I'm gonna just duck into the pits. So yeah, I just circulated until I caught up to them, went into the pits, and I actually made a small mistake. I almost lost it badly in turn 4. Uh, Managed to somehow save it, and through all of that, once Paul Williams pitted, he came out ahead of me. So we were like nose to tail. And that was quite a fun bit of the race because it was Paul Williams ahead of me. It was Lambert Weather behind me, and behind him was Mark Baker. And obviously, Paul Williams and Mark Baker are teammates. So it was quite a tricky situation. I didn't really want to race Paul, but I knew I had to get past him because Baker was catching up to me, and I'm racing Baker. So it was tense, but it was cool. Everybody showed good respect, and we just had actually a very good battle.
Oh, indeed, and we did see that quite often with regards to towards the end of the race, the four of you together until Mark Baker had that moment coming through turn number 2 where he spun the car coming out of the apex of turn number 2. But throughout that, I do have to ask, were you mindful of the fact that with Lammett just behind, were you hoping that Wedder would just not put the car on the inside and sort of force you onto an outside line and give Mark Baker that opportunity to come through?
I don't think he actually got. The only time he really got within half a second was when I was battling with Paul, and like I said, the guys were very respectful. So a bit early in the race, myself and Lammett also raced basically next to each other, and we had very similar pace. So we were like a half a second to a second difference to each other, and we kind of just sat there. So the second time around when it happened, I was confident that he wouldn't do anything silly, and that was true. And then the second part of that was the moment I got very close to Paul, like 0.2 or so away from him. I knew if we battled too much, then the BMW would come into play. So yes, obviously, if you're a racing driver, if two guys battling ahead of you and something happens and they've got a slow exit, you have to go to the move. I mean, that's only fair. So I knew I had to make the move on Paul Williams. So yeah.
Oh, indeed. And in the end, by coming through past Paul Williams, it seems though you'd put the challenge to bed effectively and were able to bring the car home winner in the AM class. And well, with what has been a brilliant drive today, looking ahead now to Monza in a week's time, of course, the Italian Cathedral of Speed, how are you feeling for the low downforce high-speed circuit?
I think Monza should be fun, because that's an overtaking circuit. It's a slipstream circuit. So I think with Baker and Doherty, the two of them have been really fast this last round, and they were also quite good at Spa, which is okay. We ran medium downforce, but it's also a high speed circuit. So I think lap times, quali lap times, and race lap times are going to be two different things, because if you are half a second faster than someone, it's not really going to mean much at Monza. You need to be, you know what I mean? You need to break a second or so to actually make a difference. So I hope Monza's a clean race, but I do think it's going to be a fun race in terms of overtaking and door to door. So yeah, being a little bit faster is not going to be enough. You're going to have to be a lot faster.
Oh, indeed. It's definitely going to be a slipstream showdown in a week's time. We look forward to seeing how you get on at Monza. But until then, congratulations on the win in the feature race. A brilliant night from yourself. And thank you for joining us once again in the interview room.
Cool. Cheers, Paul.
All the best.
Cheers. Bye.
So hearing there from Stephan Wessels, who very pleased, and well, the one biggest thing to take away, and I think we can all agree on this throughout the whole of tonight with regards to the race and the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing, the amount of respectful racing we saw time and time again up and down the field. And Wessels even saying that whilst drivers are making mistakes occasionally or going slow, nobody at any point really driving to go out of their harm's way to hurt others, alternatively driving erratic. And it was great racing all the way through. And Wessels in the end loving that race in between himself, Paul Williams, Lammett and Mark Baker, with that rather interesting dichotomy whereby he was stuck behind Paul Williams and he had Lammett behind as well, and it was the case that Mark Baker literally sat there looking for that opportunity. Of course, Baker in the end getting it wrong at turn 2 in the final quarter of the race, seeing that his opportunity for the win went off into the shadows, and it was the case that Stephan Wessels was able to put the move on Paul Williams in the end in order to run away with a certain victory in the AM class. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. That's all we've got time for today. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out our official website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, if you're Facebook inclined, why not take a look at our Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners, without whom it would not be possible to bring you a lobby to, and that is Coach Dave Academy. You can find them at coachdaveacademy.com, and also Next Level Racing at nextlevelracing.com. But now, we look away from Belgium to another European country. We head to the Italian circuit, known only as Monza, for round number 10 in a week's time, with the racing taking place on Wednesday, the 26th of January 2022, but we'll be bringing you Lobby 2's action on Thursday, the 27th of January 2022. And whilst we've yet to agree agree who is going to be providing you with a reference lap, and we can see the reference lap here being brought to you by Jean-Louis Deschamps, who will be bringing the reference lap for the Apex Racing Academy lobby. As we were hearing there from Stephan Wessels, this circuit all about the slipstream. This is a track where it's low downforce. We're expecting low downforce setups to be applied to our drivers' cars, and it's the case. It's not going to be an advantage of half a second that keeps you clear. You need at least a 1 second advantage lap on lap to keep you clear. Otherwise, it's going to be a slipstream fest through and through, and into these heavy braking zones, into particularly the opening 2 chicanes. Anything can happen under braking, and we can expect there's going to be plenty of door-to-door and side-by-side battling all the way around the circuit. It's going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and you won't want to miss it next week. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Next Gen Racing. I have been Paul Walsh, your host, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and as always, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.